"Mom, you're having a panic attack. Stop calling people. You're scaring everyone." That's what my son said over the phone, his voice dripping with fake concern, while I discovered he'd sent an email to 312 people claiming I had dementia. But the truth is far more horrifying. He didn't just want my money, he wanted me gone for good. Can a mother survive when her own flesh and blood becomes her enemy? Welcome to Voices of Auntie Rose, where stories of family, forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to rise above betrayal come to life with heart and soul. We're so glad you're here, joining a community that celebrates the unbreakable human spirit. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story. And it would be amazing if you could like this video, share it, or drop a comment letting us know what time it is and which city or country you're watching from. Your shares and comments are the greatest gift, the powerful inspiration that keeps this channel growing and spreading meaningful life lessons every single day. Now, let's dive into today's story. The autumn rain drummed against the windows of my Queen Anne Victorian as I wrote out another check, my arthritic fingers trembling slightly not from age, but from the familiar mixture of love and worry that had become my constant companion these past 4 years. $84,000. That's what I'd given Brian and Ashley since they'd moved back to Seattle temporarily after Brian lost his job at Microsoft. The number stared back at me from my Wells Fargo statement like an accusation I refused to acknowledge. "Mom, you're a lifesaver," Brian had said 4 years ago, his eyes avoiding mine as he pocketed the first check for their Capitol Hill loft deposit. $3,500 for first month, last month, and security. Ashley had stood beside him, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her iPhone, already calculating what furniture they'd need. "Just until I get back on my feet," he'd promised. That was 48 months ago. I'm Margaret Thompson Maggie, to those who still remember the head nurse who ran Swedish Medical Center's cardiac unit for 37 years. At 72, I should have been enjoying my retirement, taking those Alaskan cruises I'd dreamed about while working double shifts, maybe finally learning to paint at the Pratt Fine Arts Center. Instead, I found myself funding a lifestyle I could barely recognize as belonging to my only son. The monthly transfers had become as regular as my blood pressure medication. $3,600 for their rent, $800 for Ashley's wellness coaching certification that never seemed to complete, $600 for Brian's car payment on the BMW he needed for job interviews, another $400 for what Ashley called networking expenses, but looked suspiciously like Nordstrom receipts on her Instagram stories. My late husband Tom would have been horrified. A Boeing engineer for 35 years, he'd taught Brian the value of hard work, saving every penny to ensure our son could graduate from UW debt-free. "We're giving him roots and wings, Maggie," Tom had said, his calloused hands holding mine as we watched Brian graduate with honors. Now, 12 years after Tom's death from a sudden heart attack, those wings had become golden chains binding me to an ATM existence. The doorbell rang, jolting me from my calculations. Through the rain-streaked glass, I saw Ashley's Tesla Model Y, another investment in their future I'd reluctantly co-signed for last year. She entered without waiting for me to answer, her Lululemon workout set still pristine despite the downpour, her highlighted hair somehow immune to Seattle's humidity. "Hi, Maggie," she chirped, that saccharine tone she'd perfected over the years coating her words like artificial sweetener. She'd never called me Mom, not once in their 5 years of marriage. "Brian's in the car. We can't stay long, we have that thing." There was always a thing, a mysterious appointment that prevented them from staying for coffee, from helping with the yard work, from simply sitting and talking like families do, but never too busy to pick up a check. I made Tom's apple pie, I offered, gesturing toward the kitchen where the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg, Brian's favorite since childhood, filled the air, the one he used to beg for every Sunday. Ashley's nose wrinkled almost imperceptibly. "Oh, that's sweet. But you know we're doing keto now. Sugar is basically poison, Maggie. You should really think about your health at your age." At my age. The words hung between us like the smell of pie that suddenly seemed cloying rather than comforting. Through the window, I could see Brian in the passenger seat, his face illuminated by his phone screen, not even glancing toward his childhood home. "The check?" Ashley prompted, her patience visibly thinning. "The property management company is being really strict about late fees." I handed her the envelope I'd prepared $4,200 this month because they'd mentioned something about Ashley's mother needing surgery. Later, I'd see on Facebook that Ashley's mother was in Cabo, perfectly healthy, posting pictures from her yoga retreat. "Thanks, you're the best." Ashley grabbed the envelope, already backing toward the door. "Oh, and Brian wanted me to mention his cousin Jordan is getting married next month. Family only, you understand. Very intimate. But don't worry, we'll take lots of pictures." The door closed behind her before I could respond, leaving me alone with a cooling pie and the echo of family only. I watched their Tesla pull away, neither of them looking back, and felt something crack inside my chest, not my heart, though it certainly ached, but perhaps the last vestige of the illusion I'd been maintaining. On the kitchen counter, next to the untouched pie, sat a framed photo from Brian's 10th birthday. Tom and I flanked him as he blew out candles, his gap-toothed grin radiating pure joy, his small arms wrapped around my waist. "Best mom ever," he'd written in crayon on a card that year. Now, 36 years old, he couldn't even come inside to say hello. That night, I lay awake listening to the rain, calculating not just dollars but years of devotion reduced to transactions. $84,000 over 4 years. But what I'd really given them was immeasurable. My dreams, my dignity, my desperate hope that money could somehow purchase the love that should have been freely given. The sheets felt cold despite the electric blanket, and I realized with stunning clarity that I'd been dying a slow death by 1,000 withdrawals, each one taking not just money but another piece of my soul. The morning after that rainy visit, I woke with a heaviness in my chest that had nothing to do with my blood pressure. November had crept in while I wasn't paying attention, and with it came the familiar ritual of preparing for Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday since Tom passed. For 12 years, I'd maintained our tradition. Turkey brined in apple cider, Tom's mother's stuffing recipe from 1943, and enough food to feed 20 people even when it was just Brian, Ashley, and me. This year would be different, I decided during my sleepless night. This year, I'd make it special enough that they couldn't possibly rush off to some mysterious thing. I'd already ordered the 24-pound organic turkey from Whole Foods, spent 3 days making cranberry sauce from scratch with berries from Pike Place Market, and even bought new linens from Macy's ivory with gold trim that cost more than I'd spent on myself in 6 months. "Brian, honey." I'd called him 2 weeks before, my voice deliberately bright. "I'm planning something wonderful for Thanksgiving. Can you and Ashley confirm you'll be here? I need to know for the preparations." "Yeah, Mom, sure," he'd mumbled, clearly distracted. I could hear Ashley in the background saying something about Pilates. "Actually, wait, let me check with Ash." The muffled conversation that followed sent needles through my heart. "Do we have to?" I heard Ashley whine. "Your mom's turkey is always so dry, and she gets all emotional about your dad." "We'll be there, Mom," Brian had finally said, returning to the phone. "But we can only stay for a couple hours. Ashley's family is doing their thing later." Ashley's family. As if I wasn't family. As if the woman who'd hemorrhaged during Brian's birth, who'd spent 17 hours in labor refusing drugs because I wanted to be fully present for his arrival, who'd nursed him through pneumonia at age 3 when doctors said he might not make it, as if I was just a preliminary obligation before the real celebration. Thanksgiving morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical Seattle November. I'd been up since 4:30, basting the turkey, warming the guest bathroom with fresh towels and tiny soaps from Bartell Drugs, setting the table with the wedding china Tom and I had received 47 years ago, each plate carefully placed, each piece of silver polished until it reflected my increasingly hollow eyes. By noon, everything was ready. The house smelled like heaven, or what I imagined heaven might smell like if it were made of butter and sage and cinnamon. I'd even bought a bottle of that pretentious wine Ashley liked, the one with the minimalist label that cost $62 at Metropolitan Market. 12:30 passed. Then 1. At 1:15, my phone buzzed with a text from Brian. "Running late. Start without us." Start without us, as if Thanksgiving dinner was a movie you could join halfway through. At 2 o'clock, I sat down alone at my beautifully set table, the turkey growing cold despite its foil tent, the gravy developing that unappetizing skin that forms when it sits too long. I served myself a modest portion and ate in silence, the only sound the grandfather clock Tom had restored each tick, a reminder of time wasted waiting for people who weren't coming. At 3:47, my phone rang. Not Brian. My neighbor, Dorothy Chen, a retired Boeing executive who'd become my walking partner these past months. "Maggie, dear," she said, her voice careful. I don't mean to intrude, but I just saw something on Instagram that concerned me. My stomach dropped. I didn't have Instagram. Ashley had once laughed at the very idea, saying it was not for your generation, Maggie, but Dorothy's daughter had shown her how to use it. What kind of something? I asked, though I already knew it would hurt. There's a photo from Ashley's account. They're at a restaurant, Maggie. The Columbia Tower Club, a big group. The caption says, "Grateful for our real family," with several hearts. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white against the ivory tablecloth. The Columbia Tower Club, the most expensive restaurant in Seattle. While my turkey sat uneaten, while I waited like a fool, they were 76 floors up, toasting with champagne I couldn't afford. There's more, Dorothy continued gently. The photo was posted 2 hours ago. Brian is tagged. He's giving a toast to Ashley's parents. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the china, knocking over the wine glass I'd optimistically poured for Ashley. The red wine spread across the ivory linen like blood, seeping into the fabric Tom's mother had given us, ruining everything it touched. I stumbled to the bathroom and vomited, my body rejecting not just the lonely meal but the years of swallowed pride, ignored slights, and minimized hurts. My knees hit the cold tile, and I stayed there, gripping the toilet, sobbing in a way I hadn't since Tom's funeral. But these tears were different. They were tears of rage mixed with such profound humiliation that my skin felt like it was burning from the inside. When I finally pulled myself up, I caught sight of my reflection. Mascara streaked down my cheeks, my carefully styled hair now disheveled. The pearl necklace Tom had given me for our 25th anniversary askew. I looked like a madwoman. Or maybe, finally, I looked like a woman who'd been driven mad. With shaking fingers, I called Brian. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. On the third try, Ashley answered, her voice bright with wine and false surprise. "Oh, Madgie, we were just about to call you." In the background, I could hear laughter, clinking glasses. Someone saying, "The market's been incredible this year." The sounds of the real family celebrating. "You were just about to call me?" I repeated, my voice so steady it frightened me. 3 hours after you were supposed to be here? Don't be dramatic, Maggie. Brian's mom had a last-minute opening at the club. You know how impossible it is to get reservations there. We couldn't pass it up. Brian's mom? The words came out as a whisper. I'm Brian's mom. You know what I meant, Ashley said dismissively. My mom. God, you're so sensitive. Look, we'll stop by tomorrow for leftovers, okay? Save us some pie. She hung up. Just like that. As if I were a restaurant she could order takeout from. I stood in my ruined dining room, wine still dripping from the table onto the carpet, the grandfather clock ticking into the silence. On the mantel sat a photo from Brian's first Thanksgiving, his tiny face covered in mashed sweet potatoes, Tom and I laughing as we tried to clean him up. That baby, that beautiful boy who'd once cried if I left the room, who'd written me poems in crayon, who'd told his kindergarten teacher, I was the most important person in the whole world. That boy had chosen to spend Thanksgiving toasting another woman as his mother. The physical pain in my chest was so intense, I wondered if this was what a heart attack felt like. But no, this was worse. A heart attack would end. This pain, this realization that I'd been erased from my own son's life while simultaneously being bled dry financially, this was a wound that would fester forever if I let it. I didn't clean up that night. I left the table exactly as it was. The ruined linens, the cold food, the empty chairs. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, each step an effort, and lay down fully dressed on the bed Tom and I had shared for 35 years. I tried, Tom, I whispered to the darkness. I tried so hard to keep our family together, but there is no family. There's just me and my checkbook. Outside, Seattle's rain began again, harder now, drumming against the windows like it was trying to break in. Or maybe trying to wash away the illusion I'd been living under, the fantasy that money could buy me a place in my son's heart, that financing their lifestyle would somehow translate into love. But love doesn't require a down payment. It doesn't come with monthly installments. And it certainly doesn't leave you sitting alone on Thanksgiving while it toasts someone else 76 floors above your pain. 3 weeks after that devastating Thanksgiving, I was still moving through my days like a ghost haunting my own life. December had arrived with unusual snow for Seattle, blanketing the city in white that should have been beautiful but only emphasized how cold my world had become. I'd lost 11 pounds, my clothes hanging loose on a frame that seemed to be shrinking into itself, disappearing like my presence in my son's life. It was a Tuesday morning when Ashley called, her voice unusually cheerful, a warning sign I'd learned to recognize over the years. That particular tone meant she wanted something expensive. "Maggie, how are you feeling? Brian mentioned you seemed upset about Thanksgiving." Her words dripped with manufactured concern. Sweet as antifreeze, and just as poisonous. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice hoarse from crying myself to sleep every night since. Good. Listen, we have some exciting news. Brian and I are planning something special for our anniversary, a vow renewal ceremony at Snoqualmie Falls. Isn't that romantic? My heart, that traitorous organ, actually lifted for a moment. A vow renewal. Perhaps this was their way of making amends, of including me in something meaningful after the Thanksgiving betrayal. "That sounds lovely," I managed, gripping the phone tighter. "When were you thinking?" "December 15th. Very intimate, very exclusive. The lodge at Snoqualmie has this gorgeous package chamber music, champagne reception, the works. It's going to be absolutely perfect." "I'll need to shop for something appropriate to wear," I said, already mentally searching my closet, thinking about the navy dress I'd bought but never worn, saving it for a special occasion that never came. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Oh, Madgie." Ashley's voice shifted to that patronizing tone she used when explaining why I couldn't understand Instagram or why my coffee maker was basically prehistoric. "This is really just for our generation. You understand. Brian's friends from Microsoft, my yoga instructor circle. You'd feel so out of place with all those young people." The room began to spin. I clutched the kitchen counter, my knuckles bone white against the granite Tom had installed for our 30th anniversary. "But I'm Brian's mother," I whispered, the words scraping my throat like broken glass. "And we love you for that," Ashley chirped, the lie so smooth she probably believed it herself. "But this is about our future, not the past. We're creating new traditions, new memories. I'm sure you understand you were young once too." Young once. As if my age made me disposable, irrelevant, a relic to be stored in the attic of their lives until needed. "However," Ashley continued, her voice brightening with opportunity, "we could really use some help with the costs. The venue requires a $5,000 deposit, and with the photographer, flowers, and catering, we're looking at about $15,000 total. Brian thought maybe you could consider it our Christmas gift?" $15,000. To celebrate a marriage I wouldn't witness, vows I wouldn't hear, a moment I was too old, too irrelevant, too much of the past to share. "Ashley, let me speak to Brian," I said, my voice finding strength in anger. "He's in the shower. But he totally agrees with everything I'm saying. We discussed it thoroughly." My exclusion had been planned, deliberated, agreed upon like a business decision. "I need to hear it from him," I insisted. "God, Maggie, why do you always have to make everything so difficult?" Ashley's mask slipped, revealing the irritation beneath. "This is supposed to be a happy occasion, and you're already ruining it with your emotional manipulation. No wonder Brian needs therapy." Therapy. My son was in therapy, and I didn't even know. What else had been hidden from me while I hemorrhaged money into their lives? "Fine," I heard myself say, though the word tasted like ash. "I'll transfer the money." "You're the best, Maggie." "Oh, and don't worry, we'll post lots of photos on Facebook so you can see everything." She hung up before I could respond, leaving me standing in my kitchen, still gripping the counter as if it were the only thing keeping me upright. 5 days later, I did something I'd never done before. I created a fake Facebook account. Jennifer Walsh, I called myself, using a stock photo of a smiling middle-aged woman who looked nothing like me. I sent friend requests to Ashley's yoga crowd, the type who accepted everyone to boost their follower counts. What I discovered shattered the last remaining pieces of my heart. The vow renewal wasn't small. The event page showed 97 confirmed guests. Brian's colleagues, Ashley's entire Pilates studio, her parents flying in from California, her 3 siblings, cousins I'd never even heard of. The menu included Dungeness crab, prime rib, and a 5-tier cake from Honeycrumb Cake Studio. That alone cost $2,000. But the worst discovery came in a comment thread. Someone asked if Brian's mother would be attending. Ashley's response: his birth mom has health issues and can't handle crowds. We're really doing her a favor by not forcing her to attend. At her age, these events are just too much stimulation. We'll visit her at the nursing home afterward. Nursing home. I lived in a 4-bedroom house in Queen Anne. I did yoga 3 times a week at the Green Lake Community Center. I volunteered at the food bank every Saturday. But in their narrative, I was a senile old woman locked away in a facility, too fragile for real life. Brian had liked the comment. My son had clicked a button affirming the lie that I was institutionalized. The physical reaction was immediate and violent. I ran to the bathroom, dry heaving until my ribs ached, my body trying to expel the poison of this betrayal even though there was nothing left inside me to throw up. I collapsed on the bathroom floor, the cold tile against my cheek, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about money anymore. They were erasing me while I was still alive, creating a fictional version of me that justified their cruelty. How many people now believed I was in a nursing home? How many of Brian's friends pitied him for having a mother with health issues? I crawled to my bedroom, literally crawled because my legs wouldn't support me, and found our family photo albums. Page after page of Brian's life. First steps, first day of school, Little League championships where I'd been the loudest cheerleader, science fairs where we'd stayed up until 3 in the morning perfecting his volcano. In every photo, my face beamed with a love so pure, it hurt to witness now. There was one photo that destroyed me completely. Brian at 16, his arm around me at his Eagle Scout ceremony. He'd made a speech that day, talking about how his mother was his hero, how I'd worked double shifts to pay for his scouting trips, how I'd never missed a single meeting despite being exhausted from the hospital. My mom, he'd said into the microphone, his voice cracking with teenage emotion, is the strongest person I know. Everything I am, I owe to her. That boy was dead. The man who shared his face was a stranger who would pay $15,000 of my money to renew vows I wasn't allowed to witness, who would tell people I was in a nursing home, who would toast another woman as his mother, while I ceased to exist in any meaningful way in his life. The snow kept falling outside, covering Seattle in a blanket of white that made everything look clean and new. But inside my house, surrounded by photos of a love that had turned to exploitation, I felt dirty, used, discarded like an ATM that had outlived its usefulness. December 15th came anyway, indifferent to my pain. While 97 guests watched my son renew his vows at one of the most beautiful venues in Washington state, I sat alone in my supposedly nursing home kitchen, staring at the transfer confirmation for $15,000, wondering how much it cost to buy your way out of someone's heart. The answer, it turned out, was exactly $84,000 and counting. But the price of my dignity? That was something I was no longer willing to pay. Retry. KX. The morning after their vow renewal, a ceremony I'd paid for but wasn't allowed to attend, I woke up different. Not refreshed, not renewed, but crystallized into something harder than I'd ever been. The December snow had turned to freezing rain overnight, coating Seattle in a layer of ice that mirrored the one forming around my heart. I made my coffee mechanically, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop to Wells Fargo online banking. The numbers stared back at me like a medical diagnosis. Checking account down to $12,000, savings reduced to $38,000. Retirement account pillaged to the tune of $168,000 over 4 years. Tom's life insurance, his Boeing pension, 37 years of my nursing salary hemorrhaging into Brian and Ashley's lifestyle like blood from a severed artery. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley with a photo attached, her and Brian toasting champagne at the vow renewal, surrounded by laughing strangers. Wish you could have been there. Maybe next time when you're feeling better. When I'm feeling better, as if I were recovering from the flu instead of discovering my son had become a parasite wearing the face of the baby I'd carried for 9 months. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I called Wells Fargo, my voice steady as granite. I need to cancel all automatic transfers to Brian Thompson's account, effective immediately. Mrs. Thompson, these transfers have been active for 48 months. Are you certain? The representative sounded concerned, probably noting the substantial amounts. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Next, I changed every password, removed Brian as an authorized user on my credit cards, and closed the joint savings account we'd opened when he was 16, the one I'd kept for emergencies that had somehow become his personal ATM. $212,000 in 4 years. The number made me physically ill. It took exactly 17 hours for them to notice. My phone exploded with calls at 9:43 the next morning. Brian first, then Ashley, then Brian again. I let them all go to voicemail, listening to each message with the detached fascination of a scientist observing bacteria. "Mom, there's something wrong with the transfer. Call me back." "Maggie, the bank says you canceled everything? This must be a mistake." "MOM, Ashley's car payment bounced. What the hell is going on?" The fourth message, Ashley's voice had lost all pretense of sweetness. "Margaret, you're being absolutely ridiculous. We have bills, obligations. You can't just cut us off without warning like we're strangers." Strangers. The word almost made me laugh. Strangers would have treated me with more dignity. At 2 in the afternoon, I heard Ashley's Tesla screech into my driveway. They had a key, of course they did. I'd given them one for emergencies, but I'd installed a door chain that morning, a $12 investment from Home Depot that would prove priceless. The key turned. The door pushed open 3 inches, then caught. "Madje." Ashley's voice was shrill, panicked. "Open this door right now." I approached slowly, staying out of reach. Through the gap, I could see her perfect face contorted with rage, her Botox preventing her forehead from expressing the full extent of her fury. "Hello, Ashley. How was the vow renewal?" "Don't you dare open this fucking door. We need to talk." The F word. She'd never cursed in front of me before, always maintaining her yoga instructor Zen facade. The mask wasn't just slipping, it was shattering. "We can talk from here," I said calmly. Brian appeared behind her, his face red, breathing hard. "Mom, what is wrong with you? You're acting insane. First, you cancel everything without telling us. Now you're barricading yourself in? Do we need to call someone? Are you having a breakdown?" "I'm having a breakthrough, actually," I replied, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. "I've realized that I've been paying $99,000 annually for the privilege of being excluded from your lives. That's a poor return on investment, wouldn't you agree?" "Investment?" Brian's voice cracked. "You're my mother. This isn't a business transaction." "Isn't it?" I pulled out my phone, scrolling to my notes. $3,600 for rent, monthly. $800 for Ashley's certifications that never materialize. $600 for your car that you used to drive everywhere except here. $15,000 for a vow renewal I wasn't invited to because I'm too old, too embarrassing, too much of the past. Tell me, Brian, what part of this resembles a mother-son relationship? Ashley pushed harder against the door, the chain groaning. "You vindictive old bitch. We included you in everything important. Thanksgiving at the Columbia Tower Club?" Silence. "The wedding renewal where you told people I was in a nursing home?" Ashley's face went white. "How did you?" "I may be old, Ashley, but I'm not stupid. I saw your Facebook post. 97 guests, and you told them all I'm institutionalized with health issues. You buried me while I'm still breathing." Brian's voice became desperate. "Mom, please. We made mistakes, okay? But you can't just abandon us. The lease renewal is due." "Ashley's student loans. My therapy." "Your therapy?" I laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "You need therapy while you destroy your mother? How modern." "This is emotional abuse," Ashley screamed. "You're manipulating us with money. We'll sue you for elder abuse. No, wait for breach of contract. Verbal contracts are binding." "Sue me?" The laugh that erupted from me didn't sound like my own. "With what money, Ashley? The money you don't have because you've been living off a 72-year-old woman's retirement fund?" Brian's mask finally cracked completely. "You owe us. For all the years of putting up with your neediness, your constant guilt trips, your pathetic attempts to buy our love, we gave you purpose. Without us, you're just a lonely old woman waiting to die." The words hit like physical blows. I actually stumbled backward, my hand over my heart. Through the gap in the door, I saw Brian's face transform not with regret but with satisfaction. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd broken me. But trauma is a teacher, and I'd just graduated. "You're right, Brian," I said quietly. "I am a lonely old woman. I've been lonely for 4 years, subsidizing 2 adults who view me as nothing more than a checkbook with dementia. But you're wrong about one thing. I'm not waiting to die. Starting today, I'm beginning to live." I closed the door in their faces, sliding the deadbolt home with a click that sounded like freedom. They pounded on the door for 20 minutes, Ashley's manicured fists making ineffectual thuds, while Brian alternated between threats and pleading. Then came the text messages, a tsunami of digital manipulation. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Please, we just need one more month. Maggie, you're destroying your relationship with your only son. We'll lose everything. Is that what you want? Tom would be ashamed of you." That last one, invoking my dead husband, almost broke me. I slid down the wall, sitting on my entrance hall floor while they continued their assault on my door and my phone. Tom would be ashamed, but not of me. He'd be horrified at what our son had become, this entitled stranger who sold his mother's dignity for a Tesla and a Capitol Hill loft. The pounding finally stopped. Through the window, I watched them drive away, Ashley gesticulating wildly while Brian gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. They'd be back, I knew. This was only the beginning. But for now, in the silence of my home, surrounded by photos of a boy who no longer existed, I sat with my phone and did something I should have done years ago. I blocked their numbers. Both of them. The silence that followed wasn't lonely, it was sacred. For the first time in 4 years, my phone was quiet, my bank account was protected, and my dignity, though battered and bruised, was finally my own again. The silence lasted exactly 4 days. 4 days of peace where I could drink my morning coffee without checking my bank balance, where I could walk through my house without seeing ghosts of the son I thought I'd raised. 4 days to realize that the constant anxiety I'd attributed to aging was actually the weight of carrying 2 grown adults on my 72-year-old shoulders. On the 5th morning, my landline rang, the one I'd forgotten to block them on, the one listed in the yellow pages from when that still mattered. I let the machine answer, Tom's voice still on the recording after 12 years. "You've reached the Thompson residence. Please leave a message." Maggie. Ashley's voice filled my kitchen, but it wasn't the entitled screech from 5 days ago. This was different, calculated, desperate, dangerous. "I know you're there. Pick up, please. We're going to be evicted." I stood frozen by the coffee maker, watching the red light blink on the answering machine like a warning. The property management company posted a 3-day notice yesterday. 3 days, Maggie. We owe $7,200 for December and January. If we don't pay by Friday, we'll be on the street. In winter. Is that what you want? Your son homeless in Seattle winter? The machine clicked off. 20 seconds later, it rang again. "You win, okay?" Ashley's voice cracked not with emotion but with rage barely contained. "You fucking win. We need you. Is that what you wanted to hear? We need you." Brian hasn't slept in 3 days. He's been throwing up from stress. His therapist says this could trigger a complete breakdown. Do you want your son to have a psychiatric emergency? Because that's what's happening, Maggie. The way she spit my name made it sound like profanity. I reached for the phone, then stopped. My hand hovered over the receiver, trembling not with indecision but with the effort of restraining myself. The machine clicked again. This time, Brian's voice, and the sound of it nearly broke my resolve. "Mom?" He sounded 15 again, young and scared. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I said terrible things. I was angry and scared and I lashed out. You're not just a checkbook to me. You're my mother, the only parent I have left. Please don't abandon me. Not like this. Not when I need you most." The performance was Oscar-worthy. If I hadn't heard him laughing about my health issues on that Facebook video, if I hadn't seen him like Ashley's comment about the nursing home, I might have crumbled. Instead, I picked up the phone. Not the landline, but my cell. I called Dorothy Chen. "Maggie, I've been worried. Are you all right?" "Dorothy, I need you to listen to something." I played Ashley's messages on speaker. Dorothy's sharp intake of breath said everything. My God, the manipulation, the theatrical timing. She went from anger to medical emergency to emotional blackmail in under 3 minutes. "They're going to escalate," I said, knowing it with bone-deep certainty. "Then you need to be ready. Do you have a security system?" "Just the deadbolt Tom installed." "Not enough. My daughter works for ADT. I'm calling her now." While Dorothy made arrangements, my landline rang again, and again, and again. Each message more desperate, more manipulative, more threatening than the last. "We know you're home. Your car is in the driveway. Brian's having chest pains. This is what you've done. Ashley's parents are calling. What am I supposed to tell them? That my mother chose money over her family? You're sick, Maggie. Mentally ill. We're calling Adult Protective Services. That last one, that threat flipped a switch in me. I picked up the landline and dialed their number from memory. Ashley answered on the first ring. Thank God. Maggie. Listen very carefully, I said, my voice low and steady as a heartbeat. You told 97 people I was in a nursing home with health issues. You committed fraud. You lied about my mental capacity while taking over $200,000 from me. If you contact Adult Protective Services, I will contact the FBI about elder financial abuse. I have 4 years of bank records, text messages, and a Facebook post where you admitted to lying about my health. Are we clear? You've made it this far, go ahead and hit like to let me know you're still with me. You know, every share you make might help someone out there find a little hope. And before we continue, don't forget to subscribe because who knows, the next story might just touch your heart. Silence. Then, you wouldn't dare. Brian is your son. Brian was my son. The man who told me I'm just a lonely old woman waiting to die? That's not my son. That's a stranger who happens to share his DNA. $7,200, Ashley said, dropping all pretense. That's all we need, $7,200, and we'll leave you alone forever. Forever? I almost laughed. Until February's rent? March? Until the car payment is due or you want another vacation you can't afford? This is different. We're going to move in with my parents in California. Start fresh. You'll never have to see us again. $7,200, and you get your freedom. Freedom. As if I needed to purchase what was already mine. I'll think about it, I lied, then hung up. Within an hour, they were back at my door. I watched through the peephole as Brian tried his key again, confused when the new deadbolt didn't recognize it. The locksmith had come that morning, Dorothy's son-in-law, who'd done the work for free when he heard my story. She changed the locks, Brian said to Ashley, his disbelief almost comical. My mother changed the locks on me. Break the window, Ashley hissed. Are you insane? That's breaking and entering. It's not breaking in if it's your mother's house. You have inheritance rights. Inheritance rights. There it was. The truth laid bare. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were actively planning for it. I called 911, my voice calm. There are 2 people attempting to break into my home. I'm a 72-year-old woman, alone and frightened. The sirens arrived in 12 minutes. Through my window, I watched Ashley try to explain to the officers that they had a right to be there, that I was confused and making a mistake. The younger officer looked skeptical. The older one, a woman with gray streaks in her hair, looked disgusted. They left, but not before Ashley screamed loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear, "You're going to die alone, you selfish bitch. Alone. No one will even find your body for weeks." Mrs. Patterson from next door came over an hour later with soup and fresh bread. That girl has no shame, she said, setting the food on my counter, screaming at her mother-in-law like that. My Ring camera caught everything. Would you like the footage? Mother-in-law. Even the neighbors knew the truth. Ashley tried to deny I wasn't really family to her, just an obstacle between her and her perceived inheritance. That night I couldn't eat the soup. My stomach churned with the realization that this was far from over. They were desperate now, dangerous in their desperation. The $7,200 wasn't an exit fee, it was a pause button, a temporary reprieve before the next demand. I sat in Tom's old recliner, the one Brian used to curl up in as a child, reading Harry Potter while I made dinner. The boy in those memories was gone, replaced by a man who would let me die alone rather than get a job. The landline rang one more time before midnight. I let the machine answer. It was Brian, drunk by the sound of his slurred words. "You know what, Mom? Dad would be disgusted by you. He worked his whole life so you could be comfortable, and you're hoarding it all like some dragon. We're your family. That money belongs to US. And one way or another, we're going to get what we deserve." What they deserved. Yes, I thought, listening to my son threaten me with my own husband's memory. You're going to get exactly what you deserve. But it wouldn't be $7,200. It would be nothing. Nothing at all. The doorbell rang at precisely 9 o'clock the next morning, 3 measured chimes that somehow sounded threatening. Through the peephole, I saw Brian standing ramrod straight in a charcoal suit I'd never seen before, probably rented for the occasion. Beside him stood two people, a silver-haired man with a briefcase and a woman in her 30s wearing flowing scarves and too many crystals. I didn't open the door. "Mom, we know you're there," Brian called through the wood, his voice professionally modulated. "This is Mr. Harrison from Brennan and Associates, and Dr. Moonwater, my life coach and wellness advocate. We need to discuss your mental state." Dr. Moonwater. Even through my terror, the absurdity almost made me laugh. "There's nothing to discuss," I called back, my hand pressed against the door as if I could physically hold back their invasion. The lawyer's voice was smooth as oil. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm James Harrison. Your son has retained me to explore options regarding your recent erratic behavior. It would be in everyone's best interest if we could have a civilized conversation." "My recent erratic behavior?" I laughed, but it came out cracked. "You mean refusing to fund 2 able-bodied adults?" "Mrs. Thompson," the life coach interjected, her voice dripping with false concern, "I'm Celestial Moonwater. I specialize in family healing and elder transitions. Brian has shared deeply troubling information about your sudden personality changes, your paranoid behaviors, your financial hoarding. These are classic signs of dementia onset." Dementia. They were actually going there. My legs gave out. I slid down the door, sitting on my entrance floor, while these strangers discussed my sanity 3 feet away. Through the mail slot, papers suddenly appeared, falling like white accusations onto my welcome mat. "Mrs. Thompson," Harrison continued, "we have affidavits from concerned parties about your mental decline. The sudden security system installation, changing locks on family members, refusing to answer phones, these are textbook symptoms of paranoid delusions common in Alzheimer's patients." I crawled, literally crawled, to gather the papers. My hands shook so violently I could barely read them. Affidavits from Ashley claiming I'd forgotten multiple appointments. From someone named Jennifer Walsh, the fake Facebook profile I'd created stating I'd been exhibiting concerning online behavior. From a doctor. Marcus Steinberg, psychiatrist, whom I'd never met, suggesting immediate evaluation for cognitive decline. "You're fabricating evidence?" I whispered, though I knew they couldn't hear me. "Mom," Brian's voice changed, becoming softer, more manipulative. "We're worried about you. Remember when Grandma started hiding money in books? Remember how she accused everyone of stealing? You said then that we should have intervened sooner. This is us intervening, because we love you. My mother had died of Alzheimer's. Brian knew this was my deepest fear, losing my mind like she did, becoming a burden, forgetting faces of people I loved. He was weaponizing my terror against me. The document Mr. Harrison has prepared, Celestial Moonwater chirped, is simply a temporary financial management agreement. You'd maintain your independence while Brian helps oversee large transactions. It's really quite progressive, keeping families together through conscious financial collaboration. Conscious financial collaboration. They'd dressed up theft in New Age vocabulary. I forced myself to stand, to walk to the kitchen, to call Dorothy with trembling fingers. "They're here," I whispered. "With a lawyer. They're trying to—" "I'm calling Patricia Chen right now," Dorothy interrupted. "She's the best elder law attorney in Seattle. Don't open that door. Don't sign anything. Don't even speak to them anymore." Through my kitchen window, I could see Ashley in their Tesla, on her phone, probably posting on Instagram about her difficult morning dealing with family mental health issues. The casual cruelty of it planning my legal execution while checking social media made bile rise in my throat. The pounding started then. Not knocking, pounding. "This is getting ridiculous." Ashley had joined them, her voice shrill. "Maggie, you're being selfish and childish. We're trying to help you." "Mrs. Thompson," Harrison's voice had hardened, refusing to cooperate, could be used as evidence of diminished capacity. The court takes isolation behaviors very seriously in elder competency cases. The court. They were actually planning to take me to court. I ran to the bathroom and vomited, my body convulsing with the violence of this betrayal. Between heaves, I heard Brian say something that shattered the last piece of my maternal heart. "She's probably in there destroying evidence. Mom's always been paranoid about money. Dad used to say she was pathologically cheap. Tom had never said that. Tom had called me prudent, responsible, the reason we could afford Brian's college without loans. But Tom was dead and couldn't defend me from his son's lies. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, they were gone. But on my porch, they'd left more than papers. There was a bouquet of grocery store carnations with a card. For our beloved mother who needs help. We'll be back tomorrow with Adult Protective Services. Adult Protective Services. Despite my threat about the FBI, they were escalating. I called the number Dorothy had given me. Patricia Chen answered immediately. Mrs. Thompson? Dorothy filled me in. Are you safe? They're coming back tomorrow with APS, I sobbed, unable to contain it anymore. They have fake doctors, fake evidence. They're going to have me declared incompetent. Listen to me very carefully. Patricia's voice was steel. They're bluffing. APS doesn't work that way. They can't just show up with a life coach and take over your finances. But we need to act fast. Can you come to my office today? Yes, I whispered. Bring every document, bank statements, the affidavits they left, text messages, everything. We're going to file for a restraining order and elder abuse charges before they can make their next move. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the carnations they'd left like a threat dressed as concern. In my mind, I saw Brian at 5, bringing me dandelions from the yard, his face bright with pride. For the prettiest mommy in the world, he'd said. Now he was bringing grocery store flowers to mark my grave while I was still breathing. I gathered every piece of evidence, 4 years of bank statements showing the hemorrhage of money, text messages where Ashley called me the cash cow, emails where Brian joked to friends about his retirement plan, Mom's house. The stack was 3 inches thick, a paper monument to my exploitation. As I drove to Patricia's office, I passed the park where I'd taught Brian to ride a bike. He'd been so scared, crying that he'd fall, that he'd get hurt. I'd run beside him for hours, promising I'd never let go until he was ready. You can trust me, baby, I'd said. Mama will always catch you. Now that same boy man was pushing me off a cliff and calculating how much he'd inherit when I hit the bottom. Patricia's office was in a converted Victorian in Wallingford, painted cheerful yellow with a sign that read Chen and Associates, protecting dignity in every season. The receptionist, seeing my distress, brought me lavender tea without being asked. Patricia herself was tiny, maybe 5 feet, but her presence filled the room. She reviewed my documents with the intensity of a surgeon, occasionally making notes, sometimes shaking her head in disgust. This celestial moonwater, she said finally, isn't a real life coach. She's Ashley's yoga instructor. And this Dr. Steinberg? He lost his license 3 years ago for insurance fraud. They're not just lying, Mrs. Thompson. They're committing crimes. Can you stop them? I can do better than that, Patricia smiled, and it was sharp as winter. I can destroy them. But first, we need to protect you. I'm filing an emergency order of protection today. They won't be able to come within 500 feet of you or your property. But Brian's my son, I heard myself say, that stupid maternal instinct, still trying to protect him. No, Patricia said gently but firmly. Brian was your son. The man terrorizing you now is your abuser, and we're going to stop him. Patricia Chen had barely filed the restraining order when Dorothy called me, her voice trembling with something between rage and disbelief. Maggie, you need to see this. Come to my house. Now. The urgency in her tone made my blood freeze. I drove the 6 blocks to Dorothy's Tudor Revival, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. She met me at the door, iPad in hand, her face pale with fury. My daughter found this while researching Brian's social media for your case, she said, leading me to her kitchen. On the screen was a GoFundMe page that made my knees buckle. Help Brian care for his mother with Alzheimer's, read the headline. Below it, a photo of me from last Christmas one where I'd been laughing at something, but they'd cropped it to make me look confused, lost. The description was a masterpiece of manipulation. My beloved mother, Margaret Thompson, is battling severe Alzheimer's disease. At 72, she requires round-the-clock care that insurance won't cover. As her only child, I've depleted my savings trying to keep her in her home. She becomes violent when we discuss memory care facilities. My wife Ashley and I have sacrificed everything, our careers, our savings, our future to care for Mom, but we can't do it alone anymore. Every dollar helps us provide the dignity and love she deserves in her final years. Goal: $30,000. Raised: $22,800. Donors: 347 people. The room spun. I grabbed Dorothy's kitchen counter as my legs gave way completely. She caught me, guided me to a chair, but I couldn't stop staring at the screen. 22,000, I whispered. Look at the donors, Dorothy said gently. I scrolled through names. and each one was a knife to the heart. Former colleagues from Swedish Medical Center. Neighbors from 3 streets over. My hairdresser. The pharmacist at Walgreens. Even the young couple who'd bought Tom's boat after he died, they'd given $500 to help care for me. "Look at the updates," Dorothy said, her voice tight. Brian had been posting regularly. Photos of medical bills, fake ones, I realized, recognizing my Medicare number with altered dates. Pictures of him looking exhausted with captions like "another sleepless night," but Mom is worth it. A video of Ashley crying, saying, "We just want Maggie to maintain her dignity." She was such a proud woman before the disease. They were already speaking of me in past tense. But the worst was a post from 3 weeks ago. Mom had a moment of clarity today. She recognized me and said, "I love you, son. These moments make everything worth it. Thank you all for your support during this journey." The date matched the day I'd refused to give them money for Ashley's spa weekend in Scottsdale. While I was protecting my financial boundaries, they were telling the world I was dying of dementia. "There's more," Dorothy said quietly, pulling up Ashley's Instagram. A series of posts with the hashtag number Alzheimer's warrior number caregiver life number sandwich generation. Photos of Ashley at expensive restaurants with captions about treating ourselves because caregiver burnout is real. A new Louis Vuitton bag with Wunching. Sometimes you need to practice self-care when watching a loved one fade away. A weekend trip to Napa Valley tagged number respite care number caregiver weekend. They were funding their luxury lifestyle with donations meant for my non-existent medical care. I ran to Dorothy's bathroom and vomited until nothing came up but bile and rage. When I emerged, shaking and hollow, Patricia Chen was there. Dorothy had called her. "This is wire fraud," Patricia said, studying the GoFundMe page with clinical detachment. "Also mail fraud if they received any checks. Identity theft, elder exploitation. We're talking federal crimes with mandatory minimums." 347 people think I have Alzheimer's, I said, my voice breaking. "My reputation, my dignity, they've destroyed everything." "They've also left a perfect digital trail of evidence," Patricia countered. "Every post, every update, every transferred dollar is prosecutors' gold." My phone rang. Unknown number. Against Patricia's gesture to ignore it, I answered. "Mrs. Thompson?" The voice was familiar but concerned. "This is Janet Morrison from Swedish Medical. I just wanted to check on you. Brian said you're having a rough day, something about not recognizing him this morning." "Janet," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I don't have Alzheimer's. I'm completely healthy. Brian and Ashley have been lying to everyone." Silence. Then, "But, the GoFundMe, the updates, all lies. They've stolen over $200,000 from me directly, and now they're stealing from hundreds of innocent people in my name." "Oh my God," Janet breathed. "Oh, Maggie." "We had a collection going at the hospital. The entire cardiac unit contributed." The cardiac unit. My former colleagues, people who'd trusted me with their lives' most critical moments, had given money to my abusers while believing they were helping me die with dignity. "I need you to tell everyone," I pleaded. "Please, I'm not sick. I'm not dying. I'm being robbed by my own son." After I hung up, Patricia was already on her phone with the FBI's Elder Fraud Division. Dorothy was screenshotting everything, every post, every comment, every dollar donated. "We need to move fast," Patricia said. "Once they realize we know, they'll try to delete everything and claim it was a misunderstanding." But we were too late. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. "Saw you were asking questions about our fundraiser. That's not very grateful considering we're the only ones who care if you live or die. By the way, your neighbor Mrs. Patterson just donated $1,000. Should we thank her for you, since you're too healthy to appreciate it?" They were taunting me. They knew I'd discovered their fraud and they were taunting me with it. Another text, this time from Brian. "Mom, you're having an episode. Don't call anyone else. You're confused and scaring people. Ashley and I are coming over with Dr. Steinberg to help you." Dr. Steinberg, the fraudulent psychiatrist who'd lost his license. "They're coming here," I told Patricia, panic rising in my throat. "Let them," Patricia smiled coldly. "Dorothy, call 911. Report a fraud in progress and elder abuse. Maggie, turn on your phone's recorder. We're going to let them hang themselves." 30 minutes later, Ashley's Tesla screeched into my driveway, but this time I wasn't alone. Patricia stood beside me, Dorothy on my other side, and through the window, I could see 2 police cruisers pulling up behind them. Brian got out first, his face a mask of false concern that crumbled when he saw the police. Ashley followed, and her expression when she recognized Patricia Chen, Seattle's most feared elder law attorney, was worth every penny I'd lost. "Mom!" Brian called out, his voice pitched loud enough for neighbors to hear. "We're here to help. Your episode this morning scared us." "Mr. Thompson," Patricia stepped forward, "I represent your mother. The woman you've been telling the world has Alzheimer's while stealing $22,800 in fraudulent donations." Ashley went white. "That money is for her care." "What care?" I found my voice, stepped forward despite my shaking legs. "I haven't seen a doctor in 6 months except for my regular checkup where I was declared perfectly healthy. You've been posting photos of me with captions about my decline while using the money for Napa Valley trips and designer bags." "You're confused," Brian started. "The only confusion here," one of the police officers interrupted, "is why you thought you could get away with wire fraud." As they were explaining Brian and Ashley's rights, they weren't under arrest yet, but they were being formally investigated. Mrs. Patterson appeared from across the street, tears streaming down her face. "Maggie, I'm so sorry. I thought I was helping. They said you were dying." "I'm not dying, Helen," I said, loud enough for everyone gathering to hear. "I'm being robbed. My son and his wife have stolen my money, my reputation, and tried to steal my freedom. But I'm very much alive and very much sane." The truth rippled through the growing crowd like wildfire. Phones came out, photos were taken, and within minutes, the story was spreading through the neighborhood Facebook group Dorothy had shown me. Brian's face as he realized his con was not just exposed but publicly destroyed. That was the moment I saw him clearly for the first time. Not my son. Not even a stranger. Just a criminal whose DNA happened to match mine. The police had barely left when Patricia Chen took complete control of my life, and I'd never been more grateful for someone's competence. Within 2 hours of the confrontation, she had transformed my dining room into a war room, legal documents spreading across Tom's mahogany table like battle plans. "First priority," Patricia said, her fingers flying across her laptop, "complete security system. Not just cameras, we need everything. They'll escalate now that they're cornered." Dorothy's son-in-law, Marcus, arrived within an hour with enough equipment to secure Fort Knox. As he drilled and wired, Patricia explained each step of our legal strategy while I sat numbly, still processing that my son had told 347 people I was dying of Alzheimer's. "ADT will monitor 24/7, Marcus explained, showing me the panic button. "One press, police arrive in under 5 minutes. These cameras," he gestured to the 8 devices he was installing, "upload directly to the cloud. Even if someone destroys them, the footage is saved. Ring doorbell here," he continued, "motion sensors on all windows, and this," he held up what looked like a regular smoke detector, "is actually a camera covering your bedroom hallway. Anyone tries to enter while you're sleeping, you'll know. The system would cost $4,800. Last month, that would have seemed excessive. Now it felt like a bargain for my life." Patricia's phone rang constantly as she worked. The FBI wanted statements. GoFundMe's fraud department was freezing the account. The Seattle Times had gotten wind of the story. Each call, she handled with surgical precision while simultaneously drafting cease and desist letters, restraining orders, and criminal complaints. "Mrs. Thompson," she said during a brief pause, "I need you to understand something. Your son and daughter-in-law aren't just facing civil penalties. The GoFundMe fraud alone could result in 5 to 7 years federal prison time. Wire fraud, mail fraud, elder abuse, we're looking at potential sentences of 15 to 20 years. 20 years. Brian was 36. He could be 56 before he got out. The baby I'd carried, whose first word was mama, whose little hand had held mine on his first day of kindergarten, that child's future was destroyed. And the worst part? He'd done it to himself." My phone, silent on Patricia's orders, suddenly lit up with a call from Swedish Medical Center's main line. Patricia nodded for me to answer on speaker. "Maggie?" It was Dr. Robert Harrison, the current head of cardiology. "I wanted to personally apologize. We've just discovered that Brian accessed our internal directory to contact staff about donations. He claimed you'd given him permission to coordinate your care funding. We've already collected $12,000 from staff members." $12,000. From my former colleagues. People who'd trusted my son because he was my son. Robert. My voice cracked completely. No, Maggie. We're the ones who should have verified. We're returning all donations immediately and cooperating fully with the authorities. And Maggie? We're pressing charges for fraud ourselves. He used our hospital's reputation to steal from our employees. After he hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Patricia, however, was already adding this to her notes, her smile sharp as a scalpel. Hospital fraud. That's another 5 to 10 years. The doorbell rang, the new Ring system immediately sending alerts to all our phones. On the screen, Ashley, mascara streaking down her face, holding an envelope. Don't answer, Patricia commanded, but Ashley's voice came through the speaker. Maggie, please. I have something you need to see. Brian doesn't know I'm here. Please, I'm trying to help you. Patricia studied the feed, then activated the two-way speaker. Miss Thompson, you're violating a restraining order. Leave immediately. I haven't been served yet, Ashley protested. Please, I have proof that this was all Brian's idea. I was manipulated too. I'm a victim here. The performance was Oscar-worthy tears, trembling, the envelope clutched like salvation. But I'd learned to see through her masks. Show the envelope to the camera, Patricia instructed. Ashley held up what appeared to be bank statements. These prove Brian started the GoFundMe without telling me. He's been hiding money. There's another account with $30,000 I didn't know about. He was planning to leave me too, Maggie. We're both his victims. Patricia muted our end. This is interesting. She's turning on him. It's a trick, I said immediately. Probably. But let's get those documents. Patricia unmuted. Leave the envelope in the mailbox. Then leave immediately or I call the police. Ashley complied, but not before looking directly into the camera. I know you hate me, Maggie, but I loved you once, before Brian poisoned everything. That Thanksgiving when you made Tom's apple pie? I actually wanted to stay, but Brian said you'd manipulate us with guilt if we did. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She ran to her Tesla and drove off, leaving me reeling. Patricia retrieved the envelope wearing gloves, evidence preservation, she explained, and we examined the contents. The bank statements were real. Brian had indeed opened a separate account, depositing GoFundMe money Ashley apparently didn't know about. But more interesting were the text messages she'd included screenshots of Brian discussing with someone named Derek how to manage the old lady and speed up the inheritance timeline. Speed up the inheritance timeline, I repeated, my blood turning to ice. This Derek person, Patricia said, already searching on her phone, appears to be a financial advisor who lost his license for fraud. He's been advising Brian on how to have you declared incompetent. My legs gave out. Dorothy caught me, guided me to the couch, but the room wouldn't stop spinning. Speed up the inheritance. My son wasn't just stealing from me, he was actively planning for my death. There's more, Patricia said grimly, reading the texts. They discussed increasing your medication. Brian mentions you take blood pressure pills. I ran to my bathroom, grabbed my medication bottle. The pills looked normal, but now I was terrified. Had he tampered with them? Was he trying to poison me? Patricia called 911. We need a wellness check and evidence collection. Possible attempted poisoning of an elder. Within minutes, my house was full of police, EMTs, and a detective who specialized in elder abuse cases. They took my medication for testing, took my blood pressure, dangerously high from stress, and took my statement while I sat wrapped in Tom's old cardigan, shaking uncontrollably. Ma'am, Detective Sarah Chen, no relation to Patricia, said gently, we see this more than you'd think. Adult children viewing parents as ATMs, then as obstacles. You did the right thing getting help. He's my only child, I whispered, as if that explained why I'd let it go so far. That doesn't give him the right to abuse you, she replied firmly. Blood relation isn't a license for exploitation. As evidence was collected and statements taken, Dorothy made tea while Patricia fielded calls from reporters. The story had leaked local nurse's son fakes her Alzheimer's for GoFundMe scam, and every news outlet wanted an interview. No statements yet. Patricia told them all. We're focusing on justice, not publicity. But I knew the real justice had already happened. Everyone now knew what Brian and Ashley truly were. The masks were off, the con exposed, the truth laid bare for all of Seattle to see. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my newly secured fortress, cameras recording every angle, panic button within reach. The house felt different, not like a home anymore, but like a bunker. Because that's what you need when your greatest threat shares your DNA. My phone, finally unmuted, showed 47 missed calls from Brian, 63 from Ashley, and 1 voicemail from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I played it. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Derek Walsh. Brian Thompson hired me as a consultant. I want you to know I've reported everything to the authorities. What they were planning, it's monstrous. Please be careful. Brian's more desperate than you know. And desperate people do terrible things." Derek Walsh's warning echoed in my mind for 3 sleepless nights. Desperate people do terrible things. Every creak of the house sent me reaching for the panic button. Every car passing made my heart race. By the 4th morning, Patricia Chen found me at my kitchen table, having dozed off over cold coffee and printed emails evidence of Brian's escalating threats that had somehow bypassed my blocked number through various apps and fake accounts. "Margaret," Patricia said firmly, startling me awake. "You can't live like this. You need to get out, be around people, reclaim your life." "How can I go anywhere?" I gestured at the stack of threatening messages. Yesterday he sent one saying he knows my daily routine, that I'm predictable as clockwork. "What if he's watching me?" "Then we make you unpredictable," Dorothy interjected, entering with her own key I'd given her for safety. "Starting with this." She placed a bright green flyer on my table. "Green Lake Community Center, Senior Pickleball League, new members welcome." "Pickleball?" I stared at the absurdly cheerful cartoon paddle on the flyer. "Dorothy, my son is trying to destroy me and you want me to play pickleball? I want you to live," she said sharply. "You're 72, not dead. And hiding in this fortress is exactly what they want you, isolated, paranoid, becoming the crazy old woman they've been telling everyone you are." She was right. The revelation hit like cold water. I was becoming their narrative. 2 hours later, despite my terror, I stood at the entrance to Green Lake Community Center, clutching a borrowed paddle Dorothy had insisted I take. The courts were full of people my age and older, the peculiar pock of plastic balls on paddles filling the air. "You must be Maggie." A woman with silver hair and a hot pink visor approached, hand extended. "Dorothy called about you. I'm Linda Chen, Patricia's aunt actually. Retired from Microsoft after 30 years of dealing with corporate sharks, so your situation doesn't shock me one bit." Before I could respond, 2 more women joined us. Nancy, mid-60s with paint-stained fingers despite her athletic wear, and Ruth, who had to be pushing 80 but moved with the grace of someone half her age. "Dorothy filled us in," Nancy said bluntly. "Your son's a piece of shit. Sorry, but I call them like I see them. My daughter pulled similar crap until I cut her off 5 years ago." "Nancy's our resident truth teller," Ruth laughed. "Former family court judge. I've seen every variation of family financial abuse you can imagine. You're safe here, Maggie. We protect our own." The warmth of their immediate acceptance almost undid me. Here were strangers offering more genuine care than my own son had shown in years. "I don't even know how to play," I admitted. "Perfect," Linda grinned. Neither did Ruth when she started. "Now she's our club champion. Beat a 30-year-old last month and made him cry." "He was already emotionally fragile," Ruth demurred, but her smile was wicked. "They taught me the basics, the underhand serve, the kitchen line, the double bounce rule. My first serves went wild, sailing over the fence or hitting the net. But nobody laughed mockingly like Ashley would have. Instead, they offered tips, encouragement, genuine celebration when I finally got one over. "Your form's actually good," Nancy observed. "All those years as a nurse, you've got steady hands and good reflexes." We were mid-game when my phone exploded with notifications. Brian had found out about the frozen GoFundMe and was posting frantically on Facebook, claiming I was being manipulated by elder predators who wanted my money. "Elder predators?" Linda read over my shoulder, then laughed so hard she had to sit down. "Honey, I could buy and sell your son 10 times over. I don't need your money, I need a decent doubles partner." "Should I respond?" I asked Patricia's aunt, my hands shaking. "Never wrestle with pigs," Ruth advised. "You both get dirty, and the pig likes it." "Besides," Nancy added, pulling out her own phone, "we've got better ways to handle this." Within minutes, the Green Lake Pickleball Club Facebook page, apparently followed by over 3,000 Seattle seniors, had a new post: proud to welcome our newest member, Margaret Thompson, retired head nurse from Swedish Medical. Despite facing elder abuse from family members, she's showing incredible courage. Number. Senior strong number. Justice for Maggie. The comments flooded in immediately. Former patients, colleagues, people I'd never met but who recognized elder abuse when they saw it. Each supportive message was a tiny brick rebuilding my demolished self-worth. Brian Thompson should be ashamed. I remember Nurse Thompson. She saved my father's life in 2008. Disgusting that children treat parents as ATMs. Maggie nursed me through my heart surgery. Time for us to support her. But the most powerful comment came from someone unexpected: Ashley's mother, Carmen, in California. I'm horrified to learn what my daughter and son-in-law have done. Margaret Thompson is a good woman who deserved better. We had no idea about the GoFundMe fraud. We're cutting off all support to Ashley immediately. I nearly dropped my phone. Ashley's own parents were publicly disowning her actions. That's going to sting, Nancy observed with satisfaction. We played for 3 more hours, and for the first time in months, I laughed. Really laughed when I accidentally hit the ball directly into Linda's designer sunglasses, knocking them into the lake. Those were $800 Pradas, she shrieked, then grinned. Good thing I bought them with my ex-husband's alimony. As we were packing up, Ruth pulled me aside. There's something you should know. That man watching from the parking lot, the one in the blue Honda, he's been photographing you all morning. My blood froze. I turned slowly, and there was Brian, his phone aimed at the courts. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. Instead, he smiled cold, calculating, and made a slashing motion across his throat before driving off. Did you see that? I gasped. We all saw it, Linda said grimly. Nancy got it on video. Ruth has his license plate, and Dorothy already called Patricia and the police. You were watching out for me? Honey, Ruth said, putting her arm around my shoulders, we've all been where you are in one way or another. Betrayed by family, treated as disposable, seen as nothing but money. But here's what your son doesn't understand. Senior women who've survived what we've survived don't just roll over and die. We fight back. And we fight together. The police arrived within minutes, taking statements and Nancy's video. The threat was clear, documented, a violation of the restraining order. He's escalating, Detective Chen noted. The public humiliation from the GoFundMe exposure, his mother-in-law's statement, losing financial control, he's becoming dangerous. I have a guest room, Linda offered immediately. Security system, doorman building, 32nd floor. Let him try to get to you there. I have a beach house on Vashon Island, Nancy added, completely isolated, only accessible by ferry. My daughter's a federal prosecutor, Ruth chimed in. One call and Brian's looking at federal charges that make state charges look like parking tickets. These women, these strangers who'd become sisters in the span of a morning, were offering me more protection and genuine care than my son had in years. But more than safety, they were offering me something I'd lost: dignity, worth, the knowledge that I mattered beyond my bank account. That night, I stayed at Linda's downtown condo, looking out at Seattle's lights from far above Brian's reach. My phone showed 47 missed calls from him, each voicemail more unhinged than the last. You've destroyed everything, he screamed in one. My job found out about the GoFundMe. Ashley's parents won't talk to her. This is your fault. But surrounded by my new tribe of survivors, his words had lost their power. I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't disposable. I was Margaret Thompson, survivor of elder abuse, decent pickleball player despite being a beginner, and member of the fiercest group of women in Seattle. And tomorrow, we had a tournament to win. The knock came at 7:30 in the morning, 3 days after the pickleball incident. I was staying at Linda's condo, but somehow they'd found me. Through the security camera, I saw a woman in a Navy suit holding an official badge, Adult Protective Services, investigating Margaret Thompson. They're here, I whispered to Linda, who was making coffee in her marble kitchen overlooking Elliott Bay. Those bastards actually did it, Linda muttered, immediately calling Patricia Chen. The APS investigator Maria Gonzalez was professional but clearly skeptical when Linda opened the door. I need to speak with Margaret Thompson regarding concerns about her welfare and mental capacity. She's represented by counsel, Linda stated firmly. Patricia Chen is on her way. This isn't a legal proceeding, Maria replied. I'm simply conducting a wellness check based on multiple concerning reports. Multiple reports. Brian and Ashley had orchestrated a campaign. Patricia arrived within 20 minutes, breathless but composed. Miss Gonzalez, I represent Mrs. Thompson. What specific allegations have been made? If you find this part truly thought-provoking, go ahead and hit like to show your support. Do you feel the same way as the character in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. Maria consulted her tablet. We've received 17 separate reports in the past 72 hours. Allegations include severe cognitive decline, financial irresponsibility, paranoid delusions, aggressive behavior toward family members, and self-neglect. 17 reports? I gasped. From concerned parties including Maria scrolled, Brian Thompson, Ashley Thompson, Dr. Marcus Steinberg, Celestial Moonwater, James Harrison, and Jennifer Walsh? Jennifer Walsh, my own fake Facebook profile, somehow weaponized against me. There are also concerning photos, Maria continued, turning her tablet toward us. The screen showed images clearly taken with a zoom lens. Me at pickleball looking confused, mid-serve concentration, me crying after learning about the GoFundMe, me being supported by Dorothy when I'd tripped over a tree root. These were taken by stalking, Patricia said sharply. Mr. Thompson violated a restraining order to photograph his mother. The complainants suggest Mrs. Thompson has fallen under the influence of individuals taking advantage of her vulnerability, Maria read. They claim she's given away substantial sums to strangers she met at a community center. That's a lie, Linda exploded. She hasn't given us a penny. We're trying to protect her from financial abuse. Maria's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Thompson, I need to ask you some questions. Are you comfortable answering? Patricia nodded for me to proceed. For the next hour, Maria grilled me. What day was it? Thursday, January 18th. Who was the president? I knew, though I wished I didn't. Could I manage my finances? Better than when I was hemorrhaging money to my son. Did I feel safe? Safer with strangers than with family. Can you explain the recent changes in your financial arrangements? Maria asked. I pulled out my folder. Patricia had insisted I keep copies of everything. Here are 4 years of bank statements showing $212,000 transferred to my son. Here's the GoFundMe fraud claiming I have Alzheimer's, $22,800 stolen from innocent donors. Here's Ashley's Instagram showing them in Napa Valley with money meant for my medical care. Here's the restraining order after they tried to break into my home. Maria's eyes widened as she reviewed the evidence. This is extensive. There's more, Patricia added, producing her own folder. Sworn affidavits from 15 neighbors who've witnessed the abuse. Medical records showing Mrs. Thompson is in perfect mental health. Security footage of Brian Thompson making throat-slashing gestures at his mother. Text messages where they discuss speeding up the inheritance timeline. Maria set down her tablet, her professional composure cracking. Mrs. Thompson, I believe I've been misled about the nature of this case. They're desperate, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. They've lost access to my money. Their fraud has been exposed, and now they're trying to have me declared incompetent to regain control. I see that, Maria said quietly. Then, louder, I'll be closing this investigation with a finding of unfounded. Furthermore, I'm recommending charges be filed against the complainants for filing false reports. Relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly collapsed. Linda caught my arm, steadying me, while Patricia allowed herself a small smile of triumph. There's something else, Maria continued, her expression darkening. This Dr. Steinberg who filed a report? He's not licensed to practice in Washington state, hasn't been for 3 years. Using his title in official documents is fraud. Add it to the list, Patricia said dryly. Maria stood to leave, then paused. Mrs. Thompson, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen every kind of elder abuse imaginable. But this, the calculated cruelty of it. From your own son, I'm so sorry. After she left, I broke down completely. The adrenaline that had kept me upright drained away, leaving me boneless, sobbing on Linda's Italian leather sofa while she and Patricia held me. 17 reports, I kept repeating. They got 17 people to lie about me. which means 17 people who can be charged with filing false reports, Patricia pointed out. This isn't just desperate, Maggie. It's stupid. They've created a paper trail of their conspiracy. My phone rang. Dorothy, calling from my house where she was collecting mail. Maggie, you need to hear this. Your neighbor Mrs. Patterson just told me something. Ashley came by yesterday crying, begging her to file an APS report. When Helen refused, Ashley offered her $500. She tried to bribe my neighbors? Gets better. Helen recorded it on her Ring doorbell. Ashley literally says, "We need multiple reports to make it stick. $500 per report, cash." Patricia was already typing furiously. Witness tampering, bribery, conspiracy to commit fraud. Your son and daughter-in-law just bought themselves federal charges. That evening, as we sat in Linda's condo watching the sunset paint Mount Rainier pink, I thought about Brian at 6 years old, crying because a boy at school said his mom was old. "You're not old, Mama," he'd sobbed into my chest. "You're perfect. I'll take care of you when you're really old, I promise. I'll never let anyone hurt you." That little boy was gone, replaced by a man willing to destroy his mother's reputation, freedom, and sanity for money. The child who'd promised to protect me was now my greatest threat. "He won't stop," I said quietly. "Even with charges pending, restraining orders, public humiliation, he won't stop until he gets the money or I'm dead." "Then we make sure he gets neither," Ruth said firmly. She'd arrived with Nancy for dinner, carrying Thai food and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Brian's monthly rent. "You know what the saddest part is?" I said, staring at the darkening sky. "If he'd just asked for help, real help, not demanded money as his birthright, I would have given it. If he'd shown even a moment of genuine love or concern, I'd have helped him. But he didn't," Nancy said bluntly. "He showed you who he really is. Believe him." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't read it, but Patricia grabbed it, her face going pale. It was from Brian, using yet another fake number. "You think you've won? I know where Linda lives. 32nd floor, unit 3211. Nice view. Would be a shame if something happened to that pretty condo. Or to Linda. Collateral damage in family disputes happens all the time." He was threatening Linda now. My war had spread to innocent people who'd only tried to help me. "That's it," Patricia said, her voice deadly calm. "He just threatened a witness. That's federal witness intimidation on top of everything else. He's looking at 20 to 30 years now." But prison time seemed abstract compared to the immediate threat. My son, the baby I'd sung to sleep, the child I'd taught to tie his shoes, the young man I'd been so proud of had become someone capable of threatening elderly women for money. The transformation was complete. Brian Thompson was no longer my son. He was my enemy. The next morning brought a new level of violation that made everything before seem like child's play. Dorothy called at 6:15, her voice shaking with rage. "Maggie, you need to see this immediately. Check your email." Linda's guest bed had become my refuge, but as I opened Dorothy's email on my phone, even this sanctuary felt violated. The attachment was a screenshot from Zillow. My Queen Anne Victorian, the house Tom and I had bought in 1987, was listed for sale. $850,000. Estate sale. Elderly owner relocated to memory care. The listing showed photos, recent photos of my home's interior, my bedroom with the quilt Tom's mother made, my kitchen with the copper pots we'd collected from antique stores. Brian's childhood room, still decorated with his baseball trophies and science fair ribbons, now advertised as perfect nursery potential. But the worst violation was the listing agent, Ashley Thompson, described as a senior relocation specialist helping families transition loved ones with dignity. I couldn't make it to the bathroom. Linda found me vomiting into her Italian marble trash bin, my body convulsing with rage and betrayal so profound it felt like organ failure. "They're selling my house while I'm still alive," I gasped between heaves. Patricia Chen arrived within 30 minutes. Along with Detective Sarah Chen and 2 FBI agents. The living room of Linda's condo transformed into a crisis command center. "She doesn't have power of attorney," Patricia said, studying the listing. "She can't legally list your property." "But she has," I whispered. "It already has 47 saves and 12 scheduled showings." Detective Chen was on her phone, barking orders. "Get fraud division on this. I want that listing down within the hour." FBI Special Agent Robert Martinez, a man who looked too young to have seen such darkness, pulled up additional listings on his tablet. It's worse. They've also listed your car, your jewelry on Facebook Marketplace, and this. He showed me an eBay listing. Vintage nursing memorabilia, complete collection from 37-year career. The photos showed my Swedish Medical Center awards, my head nurse certification, the gold watch they'd given me at retirement. Current bid, $340. They broke into my house, I said numbly. They went through my things, touched my memories, put price tags on my life. The Ring doorbell would have caught them, Patricia said, already pulling up the app. But the footage was gone, deleted. Brian knew my passwords, of course he did. I'd trusted him with everything, before learning trust was a luxury I couldn't afford with my own son. I have copies, Linda said suddenly. I had Dorothy give me access as backup. I've been downloading everything to my cloud. The footage she pulled up made everyone in the room go silent. 3 a.m., 2 days ago. Brian using his old key, the one I'd forgotten he'd copied. Ashley with a camera and measuring tape. And 3 strangers. Potential buyers they were showing my house to in the middle of the night while I slept 20 miles away. That's breaking and entering, Agent Martinez said. Burglary. Interstate wire fraud with the online listings. We're looking at 25 to life. On the video, Ashley could be heard telling the strangers she's completely gone mentally. Doesn't even remember she owns this place. We're trying to get her the care she needs, but these things take time. We can work out a private sale before it gets complicated with courts. Brian added, she won't contest it. She doesn't even know what year it is most days. One stranger, an older man with a Rolex that caught the camera light, responded, and you have power of attorney? Of course, Ashley leads smoothly. Would you like to see the master suite? Original hardwood from 1920. They were touring strangers through my home like I was already dead, pointing out renovation potential and estate sale furniture that could be negotiated. There's more, Dorothy said grimly, entering the condo with her laptop. I've been monitoring Ashley's social media with a fake account. Look at this. Ashley's Instagram story from yesterday. Exhausting day preparing mom's estate. So emotional going through her things, but it's what's best for everyone. Number family first, number estate management, number difficult decisions. The photos showed Ashley wearing my pearl necklace, Tom's 25th anniversary gift, posing in my bedroom mirror. My chest tightened. Pain shot down my left arm. The room tilted. Call 911, I heard Patricia say from very far away. She's having a heart attack. The next hours blurred. Sirens, EMTs, the emergency room at Swedish Medical where I'd worked for 37 years, now a patient on a gurney in the cardiac unit I'd once run. The monitors showed what stress had done. Elevated troponin levels, irregular heartbeat, blood pressure at stroke levels. Dr. Harrison, my former colleague, personally oversaw my care. It's stress-induced cardiomyopathy, he explained. Broken heart syndrome, literally. Your body is processing emotional trauma as physical damage. From my hospital bed, I watched Patricia orchestrate the legal response. The Zillow listing vanished. Ashley's real estate license, which she'd apparently obtained just 2 months ago, was suspended pending investigation. The FBI seized both Brian and Ashley's computers, phones, and the $340 from the eBay auction. But the damage was deeper than property or money. They'd invited strangers into my sanctuary, commodified my memories, treated my life as an estate sale, while my heart still beat barely, but beating. Linda stayed with me that first night, holding my hand while monitors beeped my survival. You know what the difference is between you and them, she said softly. You're going to come out of this stronger. They're going to prison. Tom would be so ashamed, I whispered, tears sliding into my hair. His son became a grave robber, except I'm not even dead yet. Tom would be proud of you for fighting back, Linda corrected firmly, for not letting them bury you alive. The next morning brought 2 visitors I didn't expect. Carmen and Miguel Santos, Ashley's parents, stood at my hospital room door with flowers and tears. We're so sorry, Carmen said, her voice broken. We raised her better than this. We don't understand how she became this creature. We've disowned her, Miguel added, his weathered face showing the strain. Changed our wills, filed our own police reports about items she stole from us. You're not her only victim, Margaret. You're just the one she hurt most. They left the flowers, yellow roses, not funeral lilies, and a check for $5,000. For your medical bills? Carmen insisted. It's not enough. Nothing could be, but we need to do something. I donated it to the Elder Abuse Prevention Fund that afternoon. Detective Chen arrived with news that should have been satisfying. Brian and Ashley were arrested this morning. 73 combined charges including fraud, elder abuse, breaking and entering, and attempted murder. Attempted murder? Causing a heart attack through intentional infliction of emotional distress while committing elder abuse, the DA's going for everything. But satisfaction felt hollow when I could still see that Zillow listing in my mind, my life reduced to square footage and potential, my memories priced for quick sale by the child I'd nearly died bringing into this world. That evening, Nancy from Pickleball brought something that broke through my numbness, a scrapbook the club had made. Pages of photos from my few weeks with them, messages of support, newspaper clippings about the case with headlines like "Local Nurse Fights Back Against Elder Abuse and Son and Daughter-in-Law Face Federal Charges in Shocking Betrayal." "You're not alone," Nancy said simply. "You have a real family now, one that doesn't come with price tags." Released from Swedish Medical after 3 days, I should have gone to Linda's to rest. Instead, Patricia Chen drove me to the Walgreens on Broadway, where I'd filled prescriptions for 15 years. We needed evidence, and the pharmacist David Kim had called saying he had something important. The automatic doors whooshed open to familiar fluorescent lighting, but everything felt different now, tainted by Ashley's attempted manipulation. David met us at the pharmacy counter, his usually cheerful face grave. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry about everything," he began, pulling us into the consultation room. "When I saw the news about the GoFundMe, I realized I needed to tell you what happened." He placed a folder on the small table between us. "6 weeks ago, Ashley came in asking about your medications. She had a forged letter supposedly from you, authorizing her to access your pharmacy records." "Forged?" My voice came out strangled. I suspected it immediately. The signature was wrong, and you'd never mentioned authorizing anyone. When I refused, she became aggressive. David pulled out his phone, showing security footage. "She threatened to report me to the Board of Pharmacy for discriminating against a caregiver, said her mother-in-law had severe dementia, and I was preventing proper care." On the grainy footage, Ashley's face contorted with rage when David refused her demands. But what made my stomach churn was what she said next, clearly audible. "That old bitch doesn't even know what pills she takes. We need to know what she's on so we can adjust her doses. Do you want her death on your conscience when she forgets her heart medication?" "Heart medication I didn't take. Doses they wanted to adjust." "There's more," David continued, pulling out printed emails. "She sent 12 complaints to corporate, claiming I was elder abusing by preventing family oversight. She accused me of overcharging you, of giving you wrong medications, even suggested I was romantically interested in you to isolate you from family." "That's insane," I gasped. "It gets worse." David's hands trembled as he showed the next document. "This came yesterday, after their arrest. Brian Thompson called from jail, pretending to be from Medicare, trying to get your medication list. When I recognized his voice and confronted him, he said, 'We just need to know what to tell the lawyers about her mental state. Some medications cause confusion in the elderly.'" Patricia was recording everything, her face professionally neutral but her knuckles white. "Did you report these incidents?" "Every single one." "But Mrs. Thompson, there's something else. 3 weeks ago, someone tried to pick up a prescription for Haldol under your name. Heavy-duty antipsychotic, used for severe dementia. You never had such a prescription, and when we traced it, the doctor who supposedly wrote it doesn't exist." The room spun. "They hadn't just wanted to declare me incompetent, they'd tried to create the symptoms. If you'd taken Haldol without needing it." David's voice trailed off. "It would have caused confusion, tremors, difficulty speaking," I finished, my nursing training flooding back. "I'd have appeared to have dementia." "Or worse," David said quietly. "With your age and the dose they prescribed, it could have been fatal." Fatal. My son and his wife had tried to poison me through the pharmacy. I barely made it to the consultation room's trash can before vomiting. Patricia held my hair back while David got water, both of them pretending not to see me sobbing between heaves. "I need all documentation. Patricia told David. Every email, every call log, security footage, everything. Already prepared, David said, handing over a flash drive. I also have signed statements from my 3 pharmacy techs who witnessed Ashley's visits. She offered one of them, Jennifer, $2,000 to accidentally give Mrs. Thompson the wrong medication. $2,000 to poison me. That was my life's value to them, less than a used car. We were preparing to leave when another customer approached Mrs. Chen, no relation to Patricia or Dorothy, an elderly Chinese woman I'd often chatted with while waiting for prescriptions. "Margaret," she said in accented English, gripping my hands, "I hear everything on news. Your son, he is Snake. But I want you know something." She pulled me aside, speaking quietly. 3 weeks ago, I see your daughter-in-law here. She taking picture of you when you not looking. You were reading medicine label, look confused, because writing's so small. She take many photos. Then I hear her on phone saying, "I got them. These will prove she can't manage her medications." More staged evidence. Every interaction, every moment of my life had become potential proof of my incompetence. "I should have said something," Mrs. Chen continued, tears in her eyes. "But I think family business, not my place. I'm so sorry." "You're telling me now," I said, hugging her. "That's what matters." Patricia drove me back to Linda's, but we stopped at my house first. I needed clothes and medications, which Patricia would have tested for tampering. The police escort met us there, necessary since Brian had made bail, and immediately violated the restraining order by driving past 3 times according to my neighbors. My house felt violated. Everything was exactly where it should be, yet everything felt wrong. The kitchen where I'd taught Brian to cook now felt like a crime scene. His childhood artwork on the refrigerator, "I love you, Mummy," in purple crayon, mocked me with its innocence. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, Patricia and Officer Martinez behind me. The bed was made, but not how I make it. Someone had been here. On my nightstand, where Tom's picture always stood, was a new addition. A brochure for Sunset Manor Memory Care Facility, with a sticky note in Brian's handwriting. "Reserved your room. Don't worry, we'll visit every month." The cruelty of it, the calculated psychological torture broke something in me. I collapsed on my bedroom floor, clutching Tom's photo, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. "He planned my imprisonment," I gasped. "My baby planned to lock me away while stealing everything." Officer Martinez documented the brochure as evidence while Patricia called for medical backup. My blood pressure had spiked dangerously again. But the final violation was in Brian's old room. His trophies were gone sold, presumably. But on his childhood desk was an open laptop showing a PowerPoint presentation. Managing Margaret, a timeline for asset transfer. The slides detailed everything. Week 1, establish confusion pattern through staged incidents. Week 2, generate concerned neighbor reports. Week 3, doctor shopping for diagnosis. Week 4, obtain emergency guardianship. Week 5, asset liquidation begins. Week 6, placement in memory care. Week 8, full estate control. My life reduced to a business plan, my erasure scheduled like a corporate merger. At the bottom of the final slide, projected timeline to full inheritance, 6 to 18 months depending on natural decline versus assisted transition. Assisted transition. They were planning to kill me. "This is premeditated attempted murder," Officer Martinez said, photographing everything. "This goes way beyond elder abuse." I thought I'd experienced the worst betrayal possible. I was wrong. In that moment, staring at my execution timeline created by the child I'd devoted my life to raising, I understood that Brian wasn't just willing to rob me or imprison me. He was willing to murder me. And he'd PowerPointed the plan like it was a sales presentation. The boy who'd cried when he accidentally stepped on a butterfly had become a man capable of matricide for money. There was no coming back from this. No forgiveness possible. No future reconciliation. Brian Thompson was dead to me. And apparently, I was supposed to be dead to everyone. The discovery of the PowerPoint was still fresh when Patricia's phone rang at 11 that night. We were at Linda's condo, trying to process the attempted murder plot, when Patricia's face went white. "That was the FBI Cyber Crimes Unit," she said, setting down her phone with trembling hands. "They've been monitoring Brian's digital footprint since his arrest. He's been accessing your email account, Maggie, for the past 6 months. 6 months, before the Thanksgiving betrayal, before I'd even started questioning their behavior. But I changed my password after. He had a keylogger installed on your computer last June, Patricia explained. Every password change, every email, every document you've accessed, he's seen everything. The violation felt like drowning. I stumbled to Linda's bathroom, dry heaving over the toilet while memories flooded back. Brian fixing my computer last summer, insisting I needed security updates. He'd hugged me afterward, said he worried about scammers targeting seniors. The scammer had been him. Agent Martinez arrived within an hour with a forensic computer specialist, Agent Jennifer Liu. They set up equipment in Linda's dining room, pulling up mirrors of my email account on multiple screens. He's been forwarding specific emails to himself, Agent Liu explained, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Financial statements, correspondence with your investment advisor, medical records, even personal emails with friends. She pulled up a folder Brian had created, labeled Project Inheritance. Inside were dozens of forwarded emails, each annotated with his notes. Email from Fidelity about retirement account. $371,000 available. Need POA to access. Message from my doctor about blood pressure. Could increase meds to cause confusion. Note from Dorothy about lunch plans. Potential witness. Isolate M from her. Investment quarterly statement. House value increased. Accelerate timeline. Look at this, Agent Liu said, pulling up an email I'd never seen. He created a draft response from your account to your financial advisor 3 weeks ago. The draft read, Dear Michael, I've been having some memory issues lately and my son Brian is helping me manage my affairs. Please add him as authorized on all accounts. Thank you, Margaret Thompson. He never sent it, I whispered. Because you cut off his money first, Patricia said grimly. If you'd waited even another week, he'd have had access to everything. Agent Liu continued scrolling. There's more. He's been accessing your medical portal, downloading records, altering appointment notes. Look, he changed a routine checkup note to include patient showed signs of confusion and memory loss. My medical records. The sacred trust between patient and provider, violated by my own son to build a case against me. This is from yesterday, Agent Liu said, pulling up activity from after Brian's arrest. He's still accessing your account from jail through a contraband phone. The most recent email he'd accessed was from Patricia to me, discussing trial strategy. He knew everything we were planning. But this is the worst part, Agent Liu said, her voice dropping. She pulled up Brian's own email account. The FBI had warrants for everything now. He's been corresponding with someone named Viktor Kozlov. About and purchasing documents. What kind of documents? Patricia asked. A death certificate. For you, Mrs. Thompson. Dated 3 weeks from now. The room tilted. Linda caught me as my knees gave out, guiding me to the couch while my mind tried to process this new horror. A death certificate. My son was planning to declare me dead. With a foreign death certificate and power of attorney, Agent Martinez explained, he could claim you died abroad, liquidate everything before anyone discovered the fraud. By the time authorities investigated, the money would be in offshore accounts. How much would that cost? Patricia asked. Based on these emails, $50,000, which explains this. Agent Liu pulled up another screen showing GoFundMe. They created a second fundraiser 2 days ago, before their arrest. Help Brian and Ashley rebuild after elder abuse false accusations. It already had $8,000 before we got it shut down. They were fundraising for my fake death certificate while I was in the hospital with stress-induced heart problems they'd caused. There's something else, Agent Liu said carefully. We found searches in his browser history. How much insulin to cause diabetic coma, untraceable poisons elderly, making death look natural, inheritance law, Washington state murder conviction. I didn't make it to the bathroom this time. Linda held a mixing bowl while I vomited, my body rejecting the knowledge that my son had researched how to murder me. Not in anger, not in passion, but with the cold calculation of a Google search. Through tears and bile, I remembered Brian at 8, crying because his goldfish died. Why do things we love have to die, Mommy? He'd asked. I'd held him all night, explaining the circle of life, promising that love never really dies. Now he was Googling how to kill me efficiently. Patricia was on the phone with prosecutors, her voice sharp with urgency. Attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, identity theft, computer crimes across state lines. No, I don't care that he made bail on the earlier charges. He needs to be in federal custody now. Agent Martinez was coordinating with local police. We need units at the jail immediately. He's to be transferred to federal holding, solitary confinement, no phone access. But I barely heard them. On Agent Lou's screen, I was looking at an email Brian had sent to Ashley from my account, an email I'd never written. Dear Ashley, I'm feeling so confused lately. I think I need help managing things. Would you and Brian consider moving in to take care of me? I'll add you both to all my accounts. Love, Mom. Ashley had responded, Of course, Mom, we're here for you. A conversation that never happened, creating a paper trail of my supposed decline and their loving response. How many other emails? I asked Agent Lou. How many fake conversations did he create? She ran a search algorithm. 43 emails sent from your account that you didn't write. To friends, family, doctors, your former colleagues. All suggesting cognitive decline, all praising Brian and Ashley for their care. 43 lies told in my voice, destroying my reputation keystroke by keystroke. Mrs. Thompson, Agent Lou said gently, we can prove all of this was fraudulent. Every fake email, every altered document, the IP addresses trace back to Brian's devices. Your reputation will be restored. But how do you restore a relationship that never existed? How do you mourn a son who'd been planning your murder while you were planning his birthday dinner? My phone, my new one, supposedly secure, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against Patricia's protests, I read it. Mom, they're moving me to federal. This is your fault. I'm your only child and you're destroying me over money. Dad would be disgusted. You're going to die alone and unloved, and I'm going to watch it happen from prison. You're already dead to me. Already dead to him. The feeling, finally, was mutual. But then another text. This one from Ashley from a number I hadn't blocked yet. Check your precious email, Maggie. One last surprise. Agent Lou was already pulling it up. A scheduled email, sent from my account to my entire contact list, every friend, colleague, family member, former patient. The subject line, the truth about my dementia. The email detailed my supposed decline, my gratitude for Brian and Ashley's care, my decision to sign over power of attorney, and my request that everyone support them during this difficult time. It had been sent to 312 people. My professional reputation, my personal dignity, my entire social existence destroyed with one scheduled email I couldn't stop. I stared at the screen, at my name signing off on my own erasure, and felt something inside me die. Not my body, Brian had failed at that. But the last vestige of the mother I'd been, the woman who'd loved unconditionally, who'd believed blood meant something sacred. If this part really struck a chord with you, tap that like button to let me know you're with me. Do you see yourself in the character's journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear your take. That woman was finally, completely, irrevocably dead. The psychiatric evaluation was scheduled for 8 in the morning, 3 days after the email catastrophe. Dr. Sarah Kim's office was in a restored Victorian in Wallingford, its warm colors a stark contrast to the cold terror I'd been living in. Patricia Chen accompanied me, along with Linda, who'd become my unofficial bodyguard since Brian's federal arrest. Dr. Kim was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes behind designer glasses. Her office smelled of lavender and coffee, and for the first time in weeks my shoulders unclenched slightly. Mrs. Thompson, she began, her voice gentle but professional. I understand this evaluation is crucial for your legal case, but I want you to know this is also a safe space. Nothing you say here will be used against you. Everything I say gets used against me, I replied, the bitterness surprising me. My son recorded my conversations, hacked my emails, photographed me without permission. There are no safe spaces anymore. Then, let's create one together, Dr. Kim said simply. Tell me about Brian as a child. The question shattered something in me. I pulled out my phone, showing her a photo I couldn't bear to delete. Brian at 7, missing his front teeth, holding a handmade Mother's Day card that read, "My mommy is a superhero." He was sensitive, I began, my voice cracking. Too sensitive, maybe. He'd cry when other kids stepped on ants. He once spent his entire allowance buying birdseed because he worried the pigeons were hungry in winter. What changed? Dr. Kim asked. Tom died when Brian was 24. My husband, he was Brian's anchor. After that, Brian started dating Ashley, and it was like watching someone slowly reprogram my son. She'd make little comments about how I was too involved in his life, how I was manipulating him with guilt, how real men didn't call their mothers daily. I pulled out another photo. Brian's college graduation, Tom's still alive, all three of us beaming. This was the last time I remember him looking at me with actual love instead of calculation. For the next 2 hours, Dr. Kim conducted comprehensive cognitive testing, memory exercises, problem-solving tasks, mathematical calculations, current events knowledge. My hands shook not from mental decline, but from the trauma of having to prove my sanity to counter my son's lies. "Mrs. Thompson," Dr. Kim said after scoring the tests, "your cognitive function isn't just normal, it's exceptional. You scored in the 98th percentile for your age group, 91st percentile overall. Your mental acuity is better than most people half your age." Then, why did 312 people believe that email saying I have dementia? Because people trust family narratives, she explained. If a son says his mother is declining, who questions it? Elder abuse thrives on that assumption. She pulled out a thick folder. "I've reviewed all the evidence Patricia provided, the forged medical documents, the staged photos, the manufactured emails. This isn't just elder abuse, Mrs. Thompson. This is psychological torture. Your son weaponized your deepest fears against you." "My mother had Alzheimer's," I whispered. Brian knew I was terrified of developing it. He sat with me through her final months, saw how it destroyed her, and then he used that fear to try to destroy me. Dr. Kim's evaluation continued with questions about my daily life, my social connections, my future plans. But then she asked something that stopped me cold. "Do you still love your son?" The silence stretched so long I could hear traffic outside, distant and normal, a world where mothers weren't evaluated for sanity because their children tried to murder them. "I love who he was," I finally answered. "I love the boy who made me dandelion bouquets and wrote stories about brave nurse mommies who saved the world. But that boy is dead. The man wearing his face, I don't know him. I don't love him. I'm terrified of him." "That's not mental illness," Dr. Kim said firmly. "That's mental health. Recognizing an abuser, even when they share your DNA, is a sign of clarity, not confusion." She began documenting her findings, but I wasn't done. "3 nights ago I found something," I said, pulling out my phone with trembling hands. Brian had an Instagram account I didn't know about. His username was Inheritance Soon. He'd been posting for 8 months. "Doctor," Kim looked at the screen, her professional composure cracking. The posts were a timeline of premeditation. January. Visiting mom. She forgot my birthday. Dementia setting in. March. Mom mixing up medications again. Time to consider options. May. Anyone know good memory care facilities in Seattle? Asking for my declining mother. July. The hardest part of watching a parent fade is knowing their assets are being wasted on confusion. September. Sometimes the kindest thing is to take control before they hurt themselves. November. Almost time to implement the final phase. Number family first. Number difficult decisions. Each post had comments from Ashley, and unknown accounts likely fake offering sympathy and advice about managing difficult elderly parents. "He was building a public case for 8 months, I said, my voice hollow. "While I was cooking him dinners, lending him money, believing we were rebuilding our relationship after Tom's death." Dr. Kim photographed everything for her report. "This shows clear premeditation and malicious intent. No one seeing this could believe you're the one with mental problems." Patricia arrived as we were finishing, bringing news that made everything worse. "Brian's lawyer is claiming diminished capacity," she said. "They're saying the stress of caring for his mentally ill mother drove him to a breakdown. He's using my fake dementia to claim real insanity?" I laughed, but it sounded hysterical. "He's blaming me for crimes he committed against me?" "It won't work," Patricia assured me. "Not with Dr. Kim's evaluation and all the evidence. But Maggie, you need to prepare yourself. The trial is in 3 weeks. You'll have to testify. You'll have to face him." Face him. Face the stranger wearing my son's face, the one who'd researched poisons while I was researching birthday gifts for him. Dr. Kim handed me her completed report. 15 pages documenting my complete mental competence, exceptional cognitive function, and the severe psychological trauma inflicted by Brian and Ashley's abuse. Your PTSD symptoms are severe but entirely appropriate given the circumstances, she explained. The hypervigilance, the nightmares, the physical symptoms, these are normal responses to abnormal cruelty. You're not crazy, Mrs. Thompson. You're traumatized. There's a significant difference. As we left her office, Patricia's phone rang. Her face went white as she listened. Brian posted bail again, she said. His lawyer got a judge to approve it based on the diminished capacity claim. He's out, Maggie. He's out, and we don't know where he is. The panic attack hit instantly. I couldn't breathe, couldn't stand. Linda and Patricia held me up while I gasped for air, my heart feeling like it would explode. Somewhere in Seattle, my son was free, and his Google searches about insulin and untraceable poisons echoed in my mind. We're getting you somewhere safe, Patricia said, already on her phone arranging protection. But how do you hide from someone who knows everything about you? Who has your social security number, your medical history, your every password despite changes? Who spent 8 months planning your destruction while calling you mom and accepting your checks? Dr. Kim had declared me sane. But living in terror of your own child, what could be more insane than that? The King County Courthouse loomed before me like a monument to my worst nightmare. 3 weeks of preparation, sleepless nights, and panic attacks had led to this moment. February 15th, 9 in the morning, the temperature barely above freezing-fitting weather for facing the sun who'd tried to bury me alive. Patricia Chen walked beside me, Linda and Dorothy flanking us, with Ruth and Nancy from the pickleball club forming a protective barrier behind. My real family, as Nancy called them, women who'd known me for weeks but showed more loyalty than my blood relative ever had. Remember, Patricia said as we climbed the courthouse steps, you don't have to look at him. Focus on the prosecutor or the jury. You're telling your truth, not defending yourself. The courtroom was packed. Media had picked up the story, Seattle nurse versus son in shocking elder abuse case, and every seat was filled. As we entered, a wave of whispers followed. I recognized faces from Swedish Medical, former colleagues who'd donated to the fraudulent GoFundMe, neighbors who'd received that horrible email about my fake dementia. Then I saw him. Brian sat at the defense table in a Navy suit. I didn't recognize, probably bought with the money he'd stolen from me. His hair was cut short, his face gaunt, and when our eyes met across the courtroom, I saw nothing familiar. The baby I'd carried for 9 months, whose first cry had made me sob with joy, was gone. In his place sat a predator who happened to share my DNA. Ashley wasn't there. She'd taken a plea deal, testifying against Brian in exchange for reduced charges. The ultimate betrayal between conspirators. All rise for the Honorable Judge Michelle Roberts, the bailiff announced. Judge Roberts, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, took her seat. She'd reviewed the mountain of evidence, Patricia had assured me. She'd seen the PowerPoint planning my murder, the forged documents, the staged photos. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney James Washington, stood for his opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case isn't about family disputes or misunderstandings. This is about a calculated, premeditated attempt to steal not just money but a mother's freedom, dignity, and ultimately her life. He clicked a remote, and Brian's PowerPoint appeared on the courtroom screen. Week 6. Placement in memory care. Week 8. Full estate control. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Brian's lawyer, a polished man named Richard Blackwood, countered with his own narrative. Brian Thompson is a devoted son pushed to the breaking point by the stress of caring for a mother he believed was declining. His actions, while misguided, came from love and desperation, not malice. Love. The word made me physically recoil. The first witness was Ashley, wearing a conservative black dress, her voice small and rehearsed. Brian convinced me his mother had dementia. He showed me evidence photos of her looking confused, emails about forgotten appointments. I believed him. I participated in the fraud, yes, but I was manipulated too. When asked about the Zillow listing, she broke down perfectly timed tears. Brian said it was for her own good, that she'd need memory care soon and we had to prepare financially. I didn't know he was lying about everything until the FBI showed me the real evidence. Ada Washington's cross-examination was brutal. Miss Thompson, you posted on Instagram about wearing Mrs. Thompson's jewelry while she was in the hospital with stress-induced heart problems you caused. Was that manipulation or just cruelty? Ashley had no answer that didn't damn her further. Then came my turn. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking to my own execution. My legs shook so badly the bailiff had to steady me. I placed my hand on the Bible, the same gesture I'd made teaching Brian about honesty when he was young, and swore to tell the truth. "Mrs. Thompson," Ada Washington began gently, "tell us about your relationship with your son before your husband passed." I looked at the jury, 12 strangers who would decide if my suffering was real. Brian was my miracle baby. I'd had 3 miscarriages before him. When he was born healthy, I thought God had finally answered my prayers. Tom and we gave him everything. Not just money, time, attention, love, maybe too much. What changed after your husband's death? Brian was 24 when Tom died. He seemed lost, angry. Then Ashley appeared, and suddenly I wasn't a grieving widow who needed support. I was an ATM who needed managing. The requests started small: help with rent during a rough patch, car payments while he looked for better work. 4 years and $212,000 later, I discovered they'd secretly renewed their vows at Snoqualmie Falls, telling 97 guests I was too mentally incompetent to attend. "Objection," Blackwood called. "Prejudicial." "It's fact," Judge Roberts replied. "Continue, Mrs. Thompson." I detailed everything: the GoFundMe fraud, the staged photos, the hacked emails, finding the PowerPoint about my assisted transition. When I reached the part about the fake death certificate from Victor Kozlov, Brian actually smirked, caught by 3 jury members who visibly recoiled. Mrs. Thompson Washington asked, "Do you still consider Brian your son?" The question I dreaded. I looked directly at Brian for the first time since taking the stand. His eyes were cold, calculating, waiting for me to break. "I have a son named Brian in my memories," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "A sweet boy who made me Mother's Day cards and cried when our dog died. That boy either never existed or died with his father. The man at that table is a stranger who tried to murder me for money. So no, I don't consider him my son. My son would never research insulin overdoses while I was baking his favorite cookies." Brian's mask finally cracked. He lunged to his feet. "You lying bitch. Everything I did was because you're sick. You're demented. You forgot Dad's birthday. You called me Tom twice. You're insane and everyone knows it." Judge Roberts hammered her gavel. "Mr. Blackwood, control your client or he'll be removed." But the damage was done. The jury had seen the real Brian, the rage, the hatred, the complete lack of remorse or love. Blackwood's cross-examination tried to paint me as controlling, manipulative, someone who used money to control her son. But every question backfired. "Isn't it true you gave them money to control them?" "I gave them money because Brian said they'd be homeless without it. Control would have been letting my only child live on the streets to teach him a lesson. I chose compassion. I chose wrong. You changed your locks to keep your son out. That's not normal maternal behavior. Neither is finding a PowerPoint presentation about your own murder timeline. I changed my locks to avoid becoming a statistic. When I finally stepped down, my legs gave out completely. Linda and Dorothy had to practically carry me to my seat. But I'd done it. I'd faced my would-be killer and told the truth. The jury deliberated for exactly 47 minutes. On all counts of elder abuse, fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy, and theft, the foreman read, "We find the defendant Brian Thompson guilty." Brian didn't react at first. Then, as deputies moved to take him into custody, he turned to me with such hatred that the courtroom security stepped forward. "I wish you died when Dad did," he screamed. "You were supposed to die. The money is mine. You're nothing but a walking corpse keeping me from what I deserve." The courtroom erupted. Judge Roberts hammered for order while Brian was dragged out, still screaming about his inheritance, his rights, how I'd destroyed his life. In the chaos, I felt nothing. Empty. The son I'd mourned was confirming his own death with every vile word. Sentencing was set for next month. Brian faced 45 to 60 years. He'd be nearly 90 when he got out. If he lived that long. If I lived that long. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. But all I could see was a memory. Brian at 10, hugging me after a little league game, saying, "When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a mansion, Mom. You'll never have to worry about anything." He'd been right about one thing. I'd never have to worry about him again. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for March 12th, but the week before brought unexpected visitors who would change everything. Patricia had warned me there might be character witnesses for Brian, people who'd believed his lies, who donated to the GoFundMe, who thought I really was a demented old woman hoarding money from my suffering son. What I didn't expect was Janet Morrison. She arrived at Linda's condo unannounced, carrying a box of tissues and wearing scrubs from her shift at Swedish Medical. Behind her stood Dr. Robert Harrison and 7 other nurses from the cardiac unit, my former colleagues, my former friends, people who'd donated thousands to Brian's fraud. "Maggie," Janet said, her voice thick with tears, "we need to talk to you before the sentencing. We need you to know something." Linda let them in warily, protective as a guard dog. We sat in her living room, 9 medical professionals who'd saved countless lives but had been fooled by my son's performance. "We're testifying," Dr. Harrison announced. "Not for Brian, for you. To tell the court what really happened, what we saw that we ignored, what we should have recognized." "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely confused. Janet pulled out her phone, scrolling to old texts. "6 months ago, Brian came to the hospital asking about your schedule. He said he wanted to surprise you for lunch. I thought it was sweet, told him you weren't working there anymore. But then he asked strange questions about your mental state during your final year, if you'd made any medication errors, if anyone had noticed confusion." My blood chilled. He was building a case even then. "I told him you were the sharpest nurse we'd ever had," Janet continued. "That you'd trained half the current staff, that you could still run codes better than doctors 30 years younger." He seemed disappointed. Dr. Harrison spoke next. 3 months later, he came back with Ashley. They met with administration, claiming you'd been showing signs of dementia during your employment, and asking if the hospital could provide documentation for disability benefits. When admin checked with me, I told them it was nonsense. You'd retired in perfect health with commendations. They tried to retroactively diagnose me? My voice cracked. "But here's what we're really here to confess," Nurse Patricia Williams said, tears streaming. "When the GoFundMe went up, when Brian posted those updates about your confusion and violent episodes, some of us, we wondered. We'd think back to normal moments, you searching for reading glasses, forgetting someone's new married name, and retroactively saw a decline that wasn't there. We participated in gaslighting you without realizing it," another nurse, Michael Chen, added. "We'd mentioned to each other that you had seemed tired your last year, or maybe missed things. We created false memories based on Brian's narrative." The room spun. Even people who'd known me professionally for decades had been influenced by Brian's lies to question their own memories of me. "But then the arrest happened," Janet continued. "The real evidence came out. We realized we'd been manipulated into doubting our own experiences." "Maggie, you trained me for 3 years. You never showed any decline. If anything, you got sharper with age. We let a con artist make us question reality." "We're testifying to all of this," Dr. Harrison said firmly. "The jury needs to know how insidious this abuse was, how Brian tried to rewrite history itself to destroy you." They left me with a card signed by 43 Swedish medical staff members, all apologizing, all offering support, all expressing horror at what had been done to me by my own son. The next day brought another unexpected visitor, Brian's high school baseball coach, Ted Martinez, now in his 70s but still commanding presence. "Mrs. Thompson," he said at Linda's door, hat literally in hand, "I need to speak with you about Brian." We sat in Linda's kitchen while he pulled out a worn notebook. "I've coached hundreds of kids over 40 years, he began. "Brian was talented, but there was something off. He kept statistics on his teammates' errors, used them as leverage. Once, he convinced the team that our pitcher, David Kim, was using steroids completely false just to take his position." "He was manipulative even then?" I whispered. "I should have told you," Coach Martinez said heavily. "But he was 17. I thought he'd grow out of it. Then last month, I saw the news about your case. I recognized the pattern immediately. The long con, the character assassination, the playing victim while victimizing. He showed me the notebook Brian's from high school. He kept notes on everyone's weaknesses. Page 12 is about you." With trembling hands, I read my 17-year-old son's notes about me. Mom, weaknesses, dad's death, fear of Alzheimer's like grandma, guilt about working too much during childhood, desperate for family closeness, useful for money, housing, sympathy with authority figures. I'd been a mark to my own son since he was in high school. Coach Martinez testified at sentencing, as did the Swedish medical group. But the most powerful testimony came from someone I'd never met. Evelyn Chang, a 78-year-old woman from Tacoma. "I don't know Mrs. Thompson personally," she told the court, "but I know her son's type. My daughter did the same thing to me 5 years ago. Convinced everyone I had dementia, stole $300,000, tried to have me institutionalized. I spent 2 years fighting to prove my sanity." She looked directly at Brian. "The difference is, my daughter eventually broke down and admitted everything. She got help, real psychiatric help. She writes me now from prison, genuinely remorseful. But you," she pointed at Brian, "you're still playing victim. You're still convinced you deserve your mother's money. You have no remorse, no insight, no humanity left." Brian's lawyer tried to object, but Judge Roberts allowed it. "This speaks to pattern and character, counselor." When it came time for victim impact statements, I stood on legs that felt like water. I'd prepared remarks, but looking at Brian orange jumpsuit, shackled hands, dead eyes, I threw them away. "You want to know the worst part?" I asked him directly. "It's not the money. It's not even the attempted murder. It's that you made me doubt my own mind. For weeks, every time I forgot where I put my keys or couldn't remember an actor's name, I wondered if you were right, if I was declining. You weaponized my worst fear against me." I pulled out a photo from my purse. Brian at 5, hugging me after a nightmare, his face buried in my neck. "This little boy told me I was the best mommy in the world, that he'd love me forever, that he'd protect me from bad guys." My voice broke. "You became the bad guy, Brian. You became the monster under my bed, the nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But here's what you didn't count on," I continued, stronger now. "I'm not alone. These people behind me, Linda, Dorothy, Ruth, Nancy, they're my real family now. They've shown me more love in 3 months than you have in 3 years. You thought you were isolating me, but you actually freed me to find people who love me without price tags." Brian finally spoke, his voice cold. "You're delusional. That money was mine. Dad promised." "Your father promised you'd inherit after I died naturally," I interrupted. "Not after you killed me. Tom would be disgusted by what you've become." "Don't you dare speak about my father," Brian screamed, lunging against his shackles. "He hated you. He told me you were suffocating, controlling, that he stayed for my sake. The money was supposed to be mine." The courtroom went silent. Even Brian's lawyer looked stunned. Judge Roberts spoke slowly. "Mr. Thompson, you've just admitted to premeditated murder planning based on a perceived inheritance promise. Thank you for making my decision easier." She sentenced him to 55 years. Brian would be 91 when eligible for release. As they led him away, he turned one last time. "I hope you die alone and afraid, knowing your only child died hating you." "My only child died years ago," I replied. "You're just the thing that killed him." The week after sentencing should have brought peace. Brian was locked away. Ashley had gotten 18 months and was already serving time, and I was finally safe in my own home again. But Tuesday morning brought a call that shattered any illusion of closure. "Maggie? This is Dr. Susan Park from Swedish Medical. I was reviewing some old security footage for a different case, and I found something you need to see. Can you come to the hospital?" The drive to Swedish Medical felt like traveling backward through time. Each familiar turn brought memories. Teaching Brian to drive in this very parking lot, Tom's last trip here before hospice, 37 years of saving lives in these halls. Now I was returning as a victim whose son had tried to medically murder her. Dr. Park met me in the security office, her face grave. She'd been a resident when I retired, one of the ones I'd trained in cardiac emergency protocols. "Maggie, before I show you this, I need you to know we've already contacted the FBI and Patricia Chen. This is evidence of additional crimes." She pulled up footage dated 13 months ago, before the Thanksgiving betrayal, before I'd even suspected anything was wrong. The timestamp showed 3:14 a.m., the cardiac unit medication room. There was Brian, using an ID badge that shouldn't have given him access, filling a syringe from the insulin supply. My knees buckled. "Doctor." Park caught me, guided me to a chair while my mind reeled. 13 months ago. I'd been having dizzy spells then, unexplained weakness Tom's old doctor had attributed to grief and stress. "There's more," Dr. Park said gently. We pulled all the footage after finding this. He came in 17 times over 8 months, always during night shift when staffing was minimal. He knew nurse rotations from visiting you all those years. He knew exactly when he wouldn't be caught. 17 times. 17 opportunities to poison me. We tested the batch numbers he accessed against our inventory, she continued. He took enough insulin to kill 3 people, also digoxin, potassium chloride, and morphine. The room spun violently. I grabbed the desk edge, breathing through waves of nausea. I had all those symptoms: racing heart from the digoxin, muscle cramps from the potassium, unexplained fatigue. I thought it was grief. Tom had just died, and I was so tired all the time. He was poisoning you gradually, Dr. Park confirmed, low doses to create symptoms that would support his dementia narrative. Look at this footage from 10 months ago. She pulled up another video. Brian at my house. I recognized my kitchen putting something in my coffee maker at 5:30 a.m. I always woke at 6, always had coffee first thing. He'd known my routine perfectly. How do you have footage from my house? I asked, confused. You don't remember? You had us install medical monitoring cameras after your fall last January. You gave Brian the access code so he could check on you. He must have deleted the system from your devices, but our hospital backup kept everything. My fall. I'd woken dizzy, collapsed in the bathroom, hit my head on the tub. Brian had found me hours later, insisted on the monitoring system for safety. He'd orchestrated the fall and then used it as evidence of my decline. Patricia Chen arrived as we were reviewing more footage. Her face went pale as she watched Brian methodically poisoning my morning coffee, my evening tea, even injecting something into my liquid vitamins. This changes everything, she said, already on her phone with prosecutors. This is attempted murder going back over a year. Premeditated, systematic. We're looking at additional charges that could add life without parole. But he's already getting 55 years, I said numbly. Consecutive, not concurrent, Patricia explained. Each poisoning incident is a separate attempted murder charge. Maggie, he tried to kill you at least 43 documented times. 43. The number broke something in me. I ran to the bathroom and vomited until my ribs ached, my body purging the horror of knowing my son had been slowly murdering me while hugging me goodbye, accepting my checks, calling me mom with practiced affection. When I emerged, shaking and hollow, Dr. Park had pulled up more evidence. We also found this in his browsing history on the hospital computers. He was researching insulin overdose symptoms, how to make deaths look natural, and Maggie, I'm so sorry, he was reading about your mother's Alzheimer's progression. She showed me the searches. Alzheimer's genetic markers, inducing confusion in elderly, memory care power of attorney, inheritance law, suspicious death investigation. He'd been studying how to recreate my mother's death in me. There's one more thing, Dr. Park said reluctantly. She pulled up an email Brian had sent from a hospital computer to someone named Marcus Wellington. This Marcus is apparently a death consultant, someone who helps arrange suspicious deaths to look natural. Brian paid him $15,000 for a consultation. I read the email through blurring tears. Timeline needs to be 6 to 8 months. She needs to decline visibly but naturally. I have access to her house and medical supplies. She trusts me completely. What's the safest progression? Her mother had Alzheimer's, so genetic predisposition is established. Please advise on dosing schedule that won't trigger autopsy. The response was clinical, professional, monstrous. Insulin microdosing creates confusion without coma if carefully managed. Alternate with benzodiazepines for memory gaps. Create documented incidents, falls, forgotten appointments, small fires, build witnesses to decline. Final dose should coincide with emotional stressor for plausible cardiac event. No autopsy if pattern established. My son had hired a murder consultant, paid $15,000 of my money to learn how to kill me efficiently. If this part really struck a chord with you, tap that like button to let me know you're with me. Do you see yourself in the character's journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear your take. When was this email sent? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. 14 months ago. 3 weeks after your husband's funeral. 3 weeks. Tom's body was barely cold when Brian started planning mine. I thought about those early months after Tom died, how Brian had seemed so attentive, visiting daily, bringing groceries, insisting I take vitamins he'd bought. I'd been grateful, had told everyone how wonderful my son was being through my grief. He'd been establishing his presence for the murder timeline. "We need to test you," Dr. Park said urgently. "Full toxicology, heavy metals, everything. Some of these substances can remain in hair and bone samples. We need to document what he did to you." The testing took 3 hours. Blood, hair, fingernails, bone density scans. Each sample potentially containing evidence of my son's attempt to erase me from existence. While we waited for results, Patricia's phone rang constantly. The FBI wanted to interview the death consultant. The prosecution was preparing superseding charges. The media had somehow gotten word son's murder plot started at father's funeral was already trending. The preliminary results came back that afternoon. Elevated insulin antibodies indicating repeated exposure. Trace amounts of digoxin metabolites. Potassium imbalances consistent with chronic poisoning. "You're lucky to be alive," Dr. Park said bluntly. "The doses he was giving you most people wouldn't have survived. Your cardiac conditioning from years of exercise probably saved you. Lucky to be alive because my son was an incompetent murderer." That evening I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Brian had poisoned my coffee hundreds of times holding a photo from his college graduation. Tom and I flanked him, all of us smiling, Brian's arms around both of us. On the back, in Tom's handwriting, "Our greatest accomplishment." Our greatest accomplishment had started planning my murder at Tom's funeral. I burned the photo in my sink, watching our smiling faces curl and blacken, the smoke alarm shrieking like my heart had been shrieking for months. Brian would never leave prison now. Life without parole was certain. But I would never leave the prison he'd created in my mind, the one where every happy memory was retroactively poisoned, where every "I love you, Mom" had been a lie, where my baby boy had grown up to be a monster who viewed me as nothing more than an obstacle to an inheritance. The smoke alarm finally stopped. The silence was deafening. The second trial began on a humid April morning, the Seattle rain matching the storm in my soul. This time, Brian faced 43 counts of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and federal charges that could mean he'd never breathe free air again. I sat in the same courtroom seat, but everything felt different, darker, more final. Brian looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit, his shoulders hunched, the arrogance drained away. When they brought him in, shackled at wrists and ankles, he didn't even look at me. His new lawyer, a public defender named Sarah Mitchell, had the exhausted look of someone who knew her client was beyond redemption. Ada Washington stood for his opening. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear transcends typical family dysfunction. This is the systematic, premeditated attempted murder of a mother by her son, beginning 3 weeks after his father's funeral. 43 separate poisoning attempts over 13 months, each one a deliberate choice to kill the woman who gave him life. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage of Brian stealing medications, bank records showing the $15,000 payment to Marcus Wellington, the death consultant, my medical records documenting mysterious symptoms that coincided perfectly with Brian's visits, hair samples showing chronic exposure to multiple toxins. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Ashley, testifying via video link from her minimum security facility. "Brian showed me a spreadsheet," she said, her voice hollow. He called it Project Inheritance. It had columns for drug types, dosages, symptoms induced, and projected timeline to death. He'd calculated that if Maggie died by apparent natural causes within 18 months of Tom's death, no one would question it. "Did you participate in these poisoning attempts?" Washington asked. "No," Ashley replied. "I thought we were just going to get power of attorney through legal means. I didn't know about the poisoning until the FBI showed me the evidence. That's when I realized he would have killed me too eventually. I was just another obstacle to the money." Even Ashley, his co-conspirator, had become a potential victim in Brian's mind. Marcus Wellington testified next, having made a deal for immunity. The death consultant was a thin man with dead eyes who spoke about murder like others discuss recipes. "Mr. Thompson contacted me through encrypted channels," he testified. "He wanted a natural decline protocol for an elderly parent with Alzheimer's predisposition. I provided theoretical information, only I never advised actual murder." "But you knew he intended to kill his mother?" Washington pressed. "I suspected, but my consultancy operates in legal gray areas. I provide information, not implementation." You provide murder manuals, Washington corrected, and Brian Thompson paid you $15,000 for a blueprint to matricide. The forensic toxicologist testified about my test results. Mrs. Thompson had insulin antibodies at levels I've rarely seen in non-diabetics. Chronic digoxin exposure had damaged her heart rhythm. The potassium chloride injections could have triggered cardiac arrest at any time. She's alive through sheer luck and exceptional cardiac conditioning. Each expert witness added another nail to Brian's coffin, but the moment that destroyed him completely came from a witness no one expected. Tom's sister, Helen, whom I hadn't seen since Tom's funeral. "I need to testify," she told Patricia. "I have something the court needs to hear." Helen took the stand carrying an old cassette recorder. Tom was my younger brother. Before he died, he was worried about Brian. He recorded this conversation 3 months before his death. The courtroom went silent as Tom's voice filled the space, my dead husband speaking from beyond the grave. "Helen, I'm worried about Brian. There's something wrong with him. He asked me yesterday how much life insurance I have, whether Maggie would remarry if I died. When I told him Maggie would inherit everything first, he got this look, cold, calculating. He said, 'But she's older than you. What if she goes first?' The way he said it, Helen, it scared me." Helen's voice responded on the tape. "You think he'd hurt Maggie?" "I think he's capable of it. If something happens to me, watch out for Maggie. Promise me." The recording ended. The courtroom was tomb silent except for the sound of my sobbing. Tom had known. My husband had seen the monster our son was becoming and tried to protect me even as he was dying. Brian finally broke his silence, screaming, "That's fake. Dad would never say that. You're all lying." But voice analysis confirmed it was Tom, recorded on Helen's phone during their last visit. When I took the stand for victim impact, I could barely speak through my tears. Tom knew. My husband knew our son was dangerous, and his last thoughts were about protecting me. But I was so blind with mother's love that I walked right into Brian's trap. I looked at Brian directly. "You didn't just try to kill me. You killed every happy memory I had of you. Every birthday, every Christmas, every 'I love you, Mom,' all poisoned retroactively by knowing you were planning my murder while speaking those words. You want to know the cruelest part?" I continued, my voice growing stronger. "If you just asked for help, real help, not money, I would have given everything. If you'd shown one moment of genuine love instead of calculated manipulation, my will would have left you everything anyway. You attempted murder for an inheritance you were always going to get." Brian's mask finally shattered completely. "You were supposed to die," he screamed. "Dad promised me. He said the money would be mine. You're just a stupid old woman who lived too long." Judge Roberts hammered for order, while Brian continued screaming obscenities, having to be physically dragged from the courtroom. His last coherent words were, "I should have used more insulin. I should have finished you when I had the chance." The jury deliberated for 37 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Judge Roberts' sentencing was swift and merciless. "Brian Thompson, you represent the worst betrayal possible, a child attempting to murder the parent who loved him unconditionally. You poisoned not just your mother's body but her trust, her memories, her very ability to love. I sentence you to life without the possibility of parole, sentences to run consecutively with your previous 55-year term. Brian would die in prison. There would be no release, no parole hearings, no hope." As they led him away, he turned one final time. But instead of rage, his face showed something worse, complete emptiness. The son I'd loved was truly dead, had probably been dead since Tom's funeral when he'd started planning my murder. Outside the courthouse, Patricia asked if I felt closure. "No," I admitted. "How can there be closure when your child viewed you as nothing more than an obstacle to money? When every 'I love you' was a lie? There's no closure, just a hollow space where my son used to exist." That night, Linda, Dorothy, Ruth, Nancy, and my entire pickleball family gathered at my house, the house Brian had tried to steal, where he'd poisoned my coffee, where he'd planned my death. We filled it with new memories, laughter, genuine love that didn't come with price tags or poison. "You survived," Ruth said simply. "Not just the poisoning, but the betrayal. You're the strongest woman I know." But as I lay in bed that night, I didn't feel strong. I felt like a mother whose child had died twice, once when he'd started planning my murder, and again when he'd been sentenced to die in prison. The cruelest irony? If Brian had just waited, shown genuine love, been a real son, he would have inherited everything anyway. Instead, he inherited exactly what he deserved. Nothing. 6 months had passed since Brian's final sentencing. The summer sun warmed Green Lake as I arrived for what I thought was a regular pickleball practice. Instead, I found the entire court decorated with banners reading "Survivor" and "Warrior" and "Our Hero Maggie." Surprise! Linda shouted, leading a crowd of at least 60 people, my pickleball family, former colleagues from Swedish Medical, neighbors, even some of the jurors from Brian's trial, who'd reached out afterward to offer support. "What is this?" I asked, overwhelmed by the sea of genuine smiling faces. "Your freedom party," Ruth announced, raising a champagne glass. 6 months since you escaped hell and found your real family. Dorothy had organized everything with military precision. Tables laden with food lined the court edges, a DJ played 70s music, and a massive cake shaped like a pickleball paddle read "Maggie, undefeated." "Speech," Nancy called out, and others joined the chant. I stood before this crowd of people who'd witnessed my lowest moments, who'd held me while I sobbed, who'd protected me when my own blood tried to destroy me. My throat tightened with emotion entirely different from the tears Brian had caused. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over, I began, my voice carrying across the gathered crowd. My son had tried to murder me 43 times. He'd stolen not just money, but my faith in love itself. I thought I'd die alone, unloved, forgotten. "Never!" someone shouted from the back. "But you all showed me something Brian never understood. Real love doesn't have a price tag. It doesn't require blood relation. It doesn't come with conditions or invoices or poison in coffee cups." I looked at each face, memorizing this moment of pure acceptance. Linda took me in when I was homeless in my own home. Dorothy became my guardian angel with a Ring doorbell. Ruth used her connections to ensure justice. Nancy made me laugh when I thought I'd never smile again. Patricia Chen fought for me like I was her own mother. You all saved me not from Brian, but from believing his lies about my worth. Janet Morrison from Swedish Medical stepped forward. "We have something for you, Maggie." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $75,000. "We fundraised," Janet explained as I stood frozen in shock. Everyone who was fooled by Brian's GoFundMe wanted to make it right. But this time, the money is really for you, for your new life, your real life, the one you deserve. "I can't accept this," I protested, but the crowd wouldn't hear it. "You trained half the nurses in Seattle," Dr. Harrison called out. "You saved countless lives. Let us save yours now." The celebration continued into evening, but the most meaningful moment came when a young woman approached, maybe 30, holding a baby. "Mrs. Thompson? I'm Rebecca Chen. You don't know me, but you saved my grandfather's life 8 years ago. Cardiac arrest in the Swedish Medical parking lot. You ran from the building and performed CPR for 12 minutes until paramedics arrived." I vaguely remembered an elderly man, collapsed by his car, his lips blue, his granddaughter screaming. "He lived 5 more years because of you," Rebecca continued, tears streaming. "He met this baby, his first great-grandchild. We named him Thomas, after your husband, because Grandpa insisted. He said any woman who fought that hard to save a stranger deserved to be honored." She placed baby Thomas in my arms. 6 months old, Brian's age when I'd first held him, when I'd whispered promises of eternal love and protection. But this baby wasn't mine to protect. He was proof that my life had meaning beyond being Brian's mother. "Your son is insane," Rebecca said bluntly. "How could anyone try to kill someone who gives so much love to the world?" As night fell, we moved to Linda's condo for the after-party. Her 32nd floor view of Seattle glittered like scattered diamonds. The same view Brian had threatened to destroy, now filled with real family, chosen family, who'd never ask for anything except my company. Ruth pulled me aside on the balcony. "I have something difficult to tell you. Brian's lawyer contacted me. He wants to appeal based on ineffective counsel." The champagne turned to acid in my stomach. "He can do that?" "He can try. But Maggie, he has no grounds. The evidence was overwhelming. He confessed in open court. The appeal will fail. But I wanted you to know he hasn't given up trying to hurt you. Even from prison, serving life without parole, my son was still trying to destroy me. There's more," Ruth continued gently. "He's been writing other inmates' mothers, telling them you're hoarding money that should go to suffering families. 3 women have written to you demanding funds. Patricia's handling it, but you should know he's trying to turn other mothers against you. The cruelty was breathtaking. Unable to poison my coffee anymore, Brian was poisoning my reputation from a federal penitentiary cell. Linda joined us, overhearing the conversation. Let him try. Every person here tonight knows exactly who you are. We're your witnesses, your defenders, your family. But he's my son, I whispered, the words tasting like ashes. No, Linda said firmly. Your son died the day Tom was buried. What's in prison is a monster wearing your son's face. Stop mourning someone who never existed. The party continued inside, but I remained on the balcony, staring at the city lights. Somewhere out there, in a concrete cell, Brian was probably planning his next attack on my sanity. But here, 32 floors above his reach, surrounded by people who loved me without price tags, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Tom's death. Peace. Not complete, the wounds were too deep for that, but enough peace to imagine a future, enough to plan that Alaskan cruise. Enough to consider selling the Queen Anne house and buying something without poisoned memories. Enough to believe that 73 now wasn't too old to start over. Maggie? Nancy called from inside. We're cutting the cake. I turned from the balcony, from the past, from the ghost of the son I'd thought I'd raised. Inside waited warmth, laughter, and people who'd chosen to love me. Brian had tried to kill me 43 times and failed. But in trying, he'd inadvertently given me something precious, proof that I was worth saving, worth loving, worth celebrating. Not because I was his mother, but because I was Margaret Thompson, survivor, warrior, and finally free. The cake was chocolate with raspberry filling, Tom's favorite. As I bit into it, surrounded by my chosen family, I made a decision. I would live, not just survive, but truly live. Every day Brian spent in prison, I would spend in freedom. Every moment he festered in hate, I would fill with love. It was the best revenge imaginable. And it was only the beginning. 1 year later, I stood on the deck of the Alaskan cruise ship, watching glaciers calve into Glacier Bay. The sound, like thunder, like the earth breaking, reminded me of my heart shattering when I discovered Brian's betrayal. But unlike my broken trust, these glaciers would reform, renewed by nature's endless cycle. I was learning that humans could rebuild too, just differently. Linda stood beside me, binoculars raised, while Dorothy photographed everything. Ruth and Nancy were inside at the trivia contest, probably destroying the competition with their combined knowledge. My chosen family, traveling together, creating memories untainted by poison or lies. Maggie! A voice called behind me. I turned to find a woman I didn't recognize. Maybe 50. With kind eyes but a haunted expression. I'm Sarah Williams, she said. I saw your story on the news. My daughter, she did something similar. Convinced everyone I had dementia, stole $90,000, tried to have me committed. But unlike you, I didn't have the knowledge to fight back. I lost everything. The word knowledge hit differently now. Knowledge had saved me, not just my nursing knowledge that recognized symptoms of poisoning, but knowledge of my rights, knowledge of legal resources, knowledge that elder abuse was a crime, not a family matter. Without that knowledge, I'd be dead or institutionalized. How did you survive? I asked Sarah. Barely. But seeing your case gave me knowledge I didn't have before. Knowledge that I wasn't alone, wasn't crazy, wasn't the only mother whose child viewed her as an ATM. That knowledge saved my sanity. We talked for hours, Sarah sharing her story, me sharing resources Patricia Chen had compiled for elder abuse victims. By dinner, Sarah had joined our table, welcomed immediately by my pickleball family. You know what the hardest lesson was? Sarah asked over salmon. Learning that love without boundaries is dangerous. We're taught that mothers should give everything, sacrifice everything. But that lesson nearly killed us both. Ruth nodded sagely. The biggest lesson I learned from my family court years is that blood doesn't equal love. Actions equal love. And attempted murder definitely doesn't equal love. That night, unable to sleep despite the ship's gentle rocking, I stood on my balcony watching the midnight sun, Alaska's summer phenomenon, where darkness never fully comes. It seemed symbolic. Even in what should be the darkest time, there was light. My phone buzzed with an email from Patricia Chen. My stomach clenched. Brian, communications always came through her now, but this was different. Maggie Bryan's appeal was denied. Additionally, Ashley was released early for good behavior but violated parole by trying to contact you through a fake charity. She's back inside for 18 months. You're safe. Enjoy your cruise. You've earned this peace. Safe. Such a simple word that I'd taken for granted for 72 years. The next morning brought unexpected news. The ship's activities director approached during breakfast. "Mrs. Thompson, we have a passenger who's a documentary filmmaker. She heard about your story and would like to interview you for a film about elder abuse education." Education. Another word that had taken new meaning. Educating people about elder abuse, about the warning signs I'd missed, about resources available. This could be my purpose beyond survival. The filmmaker, Jennifer Park, was thorough but compassionate. "Your story could provide education to thousands of potential victims," she explained. "The knowledge you've gained through trauma could prevent others suffering." We filmed for 3 hours, me recounting everything while glacier fields passed behind us. But the most powerful moment came when Jennifer asked, "What's the most important lesson you'd share?" "That monsters don't always look like monsters," I said, watching an eagle soar past. My son looked like success Microsoft job, beautiful wife, charming smile, but underneath, he was calculating my murder while accepting my checks. The lesson is that abuse can come from anyone, even especially those we love most. And the bigger lesson? It's never too late to save yourself. 72 isn't too old to start over. 73 isn't too old to find real family. 74 won't be too old to keep living fully. The cruise ended, but my new life was just beginning. I sold the Queen Anne house to a young family who filled it with the laughter of children who loved their parents genuinely. I bought a condo at Alki Beach, where I could watch sunsets without remembering poison in my coffee. I established the Thompson Foundation for Elder Protection, funded with the house sale proceeds. Patricia Chen agreed to be legal advisor. We provide education about elder abuse, free legal consultations, and emergency-safe housing for seniors escaping abusive families. 6 months later, at the Foundation's launch event, 300 people attended. Survivors, advocates, prosecutors, medical professionals, all united by understanding that knowledge and education could prevent tragedies like mine. Standing at the podium, I looked out at faces both familiar and new. No Brian. Of course he'd been transferred to maximum security after attacking another inmate who wouldn't help with his latest appeal scheme. But in the audience sat dozens of mothers, fathers, grandparents who'd found strength in shared knowledge, whose education about their rights had saved them. "Every person here represents a lesson," I began, my voice strong, "a lesson that love shouldn't hurt, that family shouldn't financially devastate you, that aging doesn't mean losing your agency. That knowledge is power, and education is salvation. But the greatest lesson?" I continued, seeing my pickleball family beaming in the front row. "Family isn't about DNA. It's about choice. It's about who shows up when you're poisoned, broken, and betrayed. It's about who helps you rebuild without price tags attached." As I spoke about lessons learned through agony, about education born from betrayal, about knowledge forged in survival's fire, I realized something profound. Brian had tried to kill me 43 times and failed. But in failing, he'd given me something precious, the knowledge that I was worth saving, the education to help others, and the lesson that sometimes losing everything means finding what really matters. My dear friends watching this story unfold, I hope you've found some knowledge in my pain, some lessons in my survival. This journey of mine from trusting mother to attempted murder victim to survivor and advocate carries education we all need about protecting ourselves and our loved ones. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Voices of Auntie Rose, where we share powerful stories daily that bring knowledge, lessons, and education wrapped in real human experience. Hit that like button if you believe everyone deserves dignity in their golden years, and share this video to spread awareness about elder abuse. How does this story resonate with your life? Have you witnessed similar betrayals? What lessons have you learned about family, trust, and survival? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one, drawing knowledge from your experiences, learning lessons from your wisdom, finding education in our collective stories. Remember, knowledge is your shield, education your sword, and the lessons of survivors your armor against those who would exploit your love. To everyone watching, I wish you good health, joyful days, and peaceful nights surrounded by those who love you without conditions or invoices. May you find the knowledge to protect yourself, the education to recognize real love, and the lessons to build genuine family. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until our next story, remember, you're never too old to start over, never too broken to rebuild, and never alone when you have the knowledge that somewhere, someone understands. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next video on Voices of Auntie Rose.